Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is John Campea, and this is a special open spoiler discussion of Loki episode 4 that just aired for me last night, for some of you this morning, wherever you are, however you're watching this. I hope you guys are having a fantastic day. And oh my God, last night, Loki episode, you guys know, I was not a big fan of Loki episode 3. I've loved episodes 1 and episodes 2. Was not a big fan of episode 3. I was really counting on a big rebound episode this week, and damn it, they gave it to me, and it was so enjoyable, so good. I remember it was 5 minutes into the episode, and my buddy Ryan was over joining us last night, and they were 5 minutes into the episode. I turned to my buddy and said, this is already better than last week's episode, and it just kept going, and it was great. Now, just a little bit of a warning here. In case the title of this video didn't give it away, we are going to be talking in an open, completely frank, spoilery way of Loki episode 4. If you have not seen Loki episode 4 yet, you might want to come back to this video a little bit later. You might want to come back a little bit later and check on this another time, because we are going to be speaking in a full, open, spoilery kind of way of Loki episode 4. Have I given you enough clear warning about what this video is going to be? Good. Okay, where do we start? Damn. Now, most of this video today, and we got a long one here, guys. Buckle in. We got a long one. We've already had hundreds of you guys send in comments and observations and chats and questions. So we got a long one here today, so buckle up. But we're going to spend most of our time taking those questions and comments and observations and theories that you guys have sent in. But let me give you just kind of my quick thoughts on this, okay? Quick thoughts. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was fantastic. The way they got off the planet made sense. But again, just like somebody brought up in the pregame show yesterday, if the TVA had just left Loki and Sylvie on that planet to die, it would have been the end of their problem. But whatever, maybe they figured they had answers that they needed to get from those two before they just let them die. And that's a possibility too, I suppose. But I'll tell you what, the moment Owen Wilson popped up on screen, I'm like, that's one of the big things that was missing last week. This show, it's Tom Hiddleston's show, 100%. But the part of the thing that makes this show tick is Mobius. It's Owen Wilson. And the moment he popped up on screen and was just talking for a couple of seconds, I'm like, this is one of the big things last week's episode was missing. So that was great. Did any of you guys notice the little vampire drop? Just a little mention of a vampire. Oh yeah, blah, blah, blah. Vampires. Did you notice that? Okay, yeah, we got Blade coming, ladies and gentlemen. Not in this show. Not in Loki. We're not going to get Blade in Loki. But, you know, Blade is coming in the MCU. So a little bit of a vampire mix there. My jaw hit the floor. Because we were not sure, for sure, if we were going to see the timekeepers at all in this show. Not just the episode, but in the show at all. And early in the episode, Ravona walks into the thing and you see the timekeeper sitting there. I'm like, whoa, what's going on here? Then they bring them up there, and then they're androids. So it is a wizard, just like we were speculating. This is a Wizard of Oz situation where there's something running the TVA, but it's clearly behind the curtain. It's not what it appeared. There's something going on behind the curtain. Ravona is clearly not the main mastermind behind everything. She was once just an agent. She was a B14 or a B, whatever her number was at the time, before she got promoted up to judge and all that kind of stuff. The fact that, oh, you know what makes tons of sense now? Mobius being a variant, it makes so much sense now, because this isn't the first Mobius variant who's worked for the TVA. Because when Mobius, remember episode 1, guys? Remember episode 1? When Mobius puts his drink down on the table and she's like, Mobius. He goes, oh, I thought the rings were already there. She goes, yeah, I know, you put them there. Ah, that wasn't this Mobius. That was probably another Mobius. Oh, where'd you get that snow globe? Remember the snow globe? Well, you got another agent? Ah, it was Mobius that gave it to her. It was just probably another Mobius. By the way, how great was it seeing Jamie Alexander pop in there as Lady Sif again? Just constantly kneeing him in the groin over and over again. I thought that was clever. I thought that was pretty cute. I dug it. That whole scene too, when she's with B-15 and she takes her back to the thunderstorm and says, what was that I saw in my head? What'd you do to me? And she goes, it was your memories, blah, blah, blah. And she just goes, show me. I'm like, whoo! That was good. That was good. And then yesterday on the pregame show, we were talking a little bit about what's going to happen with Mobius. I said there are two options. Number one, he survives till the end and he takes over the TVA to make it everything it needs to be. Or two, they're going to increase. Remember we talked about this on the pregame show? They're going to increase the bond between Mobius and Loki just so they can kill off Mobius to create this big emotional event for Loki. And as soon as they started, when Loki says, how about a friend? I'm like, oh God, they're going to kill Mobius. As soon as you saw them getting buddy with each other, I turned like, oh, they're about to kill Mobius. They're going to kill him. Oh, don't kill Mobius. Oh, you sons of bitches, don't you kill Mobius. Because you see them now, they've got an affection for each other. They've bonded. They're friends. It's like, oh no, now Loki legitimately cares about somebody. Oh, he's going to die, isn't he? And then sure enough, stab him. Dead. At least that's what we thought at the time. And I'm thinking, what the holy F? They just killed Mobius. And I'm freaking out in my living room. Like, I was doing a lot of freaking out watching the show last night. I was doing a lot of freaking out during the show last night. Now, then, of course, at the end of regulation time, at the end of the regular part of the episode, freaking Ravona dusts Loki too. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. Okay, the show's called Loki, but is now the rest of the show going to be about the Sylvie Loki? Is that what this means now? And then, of course, came the post-credit scene where he wakes up. We were all wondering when we were going to see Richard E. Grant. I thought we might not see him till episode 6, but here he was in the classic Loki costume. You had the one variant with what looked like a Mjolnir hammer. You had little alligator Loki. You had little boy Loki. Looks like they were in New York. Am I dead? No, but if you don't come with us, you will be. And then it shows him in that classic Loki outfit. I'm like, sploosh. I mean, it was awesome. It was awesome. I loved that episode last night for a lot of different reasons. But I did. I loved it. Thought it was good. Big step up again from the week, the earlier week. But yeah, man, it was fantastic. Had such a great time. So here's what we're going to do, guys. We're going to spend the rest of today simply taking your comments and questions about all the things that we saw. Now, I'm going to have to do something here because, again, this whole damn thing is acting a little bit wonky. So indulge me a moment while I try to fix this little problem here, if you don't mind. I have all your chat questions lined up, but unfortunately, once again, the thing is bouncing all over the place. So we're going to have to do this a little bit of a different way. I'm going to have to do a little bit of finagling here. Give me a second. We'll be ready to go in just a moment. Okay, here we go. All right. With that said, guys, let's get on over and start talking about the things you want to talk about, your observations, your theories, all that kind of stuff. Let's jump into it. All right. So we are going to start off with one that comes to us from Storm Frantic 15, who writes, "Hey, John, wow, that episode was crazy. Wondering where you think things are going to go next. Easily my favorite episode of the series so far." Oh, dude, I have no idea where they're going to go next. I just don't know. I mean, obviously, so Mobius is still alive. The pruning sticks, we all just assumed, especially me, that the pruning sticks means killing them, but clearly it doesn't. It sends them somewhere else. So we're going to see, because, Loki says, am I dead? Am I in hell? HE1L. Am I in hell? And like, no, you're not dead. So that means Mobius is out there somewhere too. So obviously we're going to pick up on that. And obviously it's going to be about Loki trying to get back to whatever the TVA is, whatever the sacred timeline is. And we'll see where they go from there. But right now they've got me on the edge of my seat. Storm Frantic. All right. Let's see here. Next up, we've got King Tantic writes, "At first, I thought they killed Mobius. So did I. I'm like, and I was ready for it, just like, oh my God, they just call each other friends. They're going to kill Mobius. Anyway, at first I thought they killed Mobius, but they also pruned Loki. I knew that they were both going to survive. Amazing episode. Two Lokis in love. Again, it is the ultimate form of masturbation. Having sex with an alternate version of yourself. Only Loki, ladies and gentlemen. But listen, when they first killed Loki, I'm not going to lie. I'm like, oh my God, the show is just called Loki. Sylvie is a Loki, which I wasn't 100% convinced of. I said the last few weeks, she is probably a Loki variant, but I am still not 100% bought into it. Obviously she is. So they cleared that up very quickly in the episode and didn't leave any more room for misinterpretation there. But when they first killed Loki, I thought, oh my God, now the rest of the show is just going to be about her. And then the post-credit scene came and it's like, okay, this is great. This is great. Okay, next up, we've got Mr. 47 who writes, wow. Phenomenal episode. Talk about a comeback. I don't know if it's more sick that Loki fell for his variant or that I wanted them to. Great to see Jamie back as Lady Sif in a hilarious but key scene. I agree. It was great to see her back. I like Jamie Alexander very much. I loved her Blind Spot show. I love her as Lady Sif. I've always wanted to see her come back into the MCU. Maybe this is a doorway that she will. Don't know. We'll find out later. But yeah, and Loki falling in love with himself. It is both the ultimate masturbatory thing and the ultimate narcissistic thing to fall in love with oneself. All right. Thanks for that, Mr. 47. Next up, Jesse Keller writes, okay, that totally made up for episode 3. Woof, that end. I know, right? And you're right. It completely made up for episode 3. Now, let me say this because I know somebody will probably bring it up. I already know somebody's going to say, okay, so that was the point of episode 3, to develop the connection between Sylvie and Loki so that, the talk about their bond in episode 4 makes sense. I still say it was a garbage episode because more skilled, they're obviously very skilled, but if they had done a better job, over the course of 45 minutes, you can do more than one thing. You can have 8 other things going on, important, relevant things, while underneath it all having a bond developing between characters. Instead, they just gave us 40 minutes of nothing and just the bond building. It's like you could have done and should have done a whole lot more. So I still say last week's episode was a total waste of time, but I agree with you. This week more than made up for it. It more than made up for it, in my opinion. All right. Thanks for that, Jesse. Next up, Cam K writes, wow. Okay. Wow. That was amazing. Mobius getting pruned gave me a reaction that is easily in my top 5 biggest reactions of any Marvel project. Dude, me and our buddy Ryan, like the moment we saw him get jabbed, we were like, no, it's like, no, he's too important to this show. Yeah. Huge reaction, man. Huge reaction. All right. Cam K also writes, so Loki falling for Sylvie somehow was leading to a Nexus event, even though they were doomed to be killed anyway. That part to me makes no sense. I don't care how big of a Nexus event 2 variants of the same person falling in love is. The fact of the matter is, they were on a planet that was about to blow up. According to the rules they have set up for us in this show, it shouldn't have created any Nexus event at all. Because had the TVA not gone and rescued them from that world, they were going to die. And all done. So that part doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I have a feeling they will return to that a little bit later on. Maybe they'll make some sense out of it. But for me, I agree with Aaron Medina in the live chat. It's a plot hole. But again, they may address it later. And we'll see. We'll see if they address it later. All right. Next up, Cam K writes, my guess for the previous super chat I put in is that Loki falling for Sylvie leads to them using their magic together, which saves them from Lamentus. Well, obviously that wasn't the case. I mean, it was the TVA that went and got them. They identified them through the spike in the Nexus event and they went and got them. Again, that didn't make much sense to me, but we'll see again if they rectify that with more information later on. All right, next up, Cam K also writes, so John, do you think there is a single entity behind the timekeepers? I do. If so, which is more likely, Kang or Loki? Love the show. Keep up the great work. All right, so to me, you just mentioned the 2 most probable things. That the mastermind, Wizard of Oz, man behind the curtain is either A, Kang, or B, another Loki variant. I think both of those are the 2 main possibilities. However, knowing Marvel, it is also just as likely that it's going to be something else entirely. I would put my money that it's one of those 2 things. It's either Kang the Conqueror or it's another Loki variant. Maybe President Loki. Don't know. But I'm not going to put it by the MCU at all for them to make it another entity altogether. We'll see. All right, next up. Mark Blazer writes, that scene with B-15 and Sylvie made my eyes water. She was shown her happy memories. Damn, TVA. Again, for me, it's that moment when she just looks at her and goes, show me. Two of the most powerful words they've used in this episode so far. I mean, it was a determined, assertive, show me. No fear. I need to know. No, oh no, this can't be. No, show me. I want to know the truth. That was powerful, Mark. All right, next up. Jose Miaz writes, wow, the episode was awesome, and I feel like that Ravona is working for Kang. That's a good possibility. Still believe that Kang is the main villain. Post-credit is awesome. Again, I believe that is one of the big possibilities here. I mean, look, we've been talking Kang since episode 1. Obviously, there's a connection to Ravona in the comic books. A lot of people thought that one of the timekeepers looked a little bit like Kang the Conqueror. It is very possible he is the one behind the curtain. We will find out. It's either that, another Loki variant, or something else entirely. All right, Cam K writes, do you think Mobius went to the same place as Loki, or do you think each variant goes to a place full of their own kind? No idea. No idea. Now, clearly, Loki went to a place where there were a bunch of other Loki variants. In a very Loki kind of place where Loki launched his invasion on Earth in New York City. So it is possible that Mobius is in a different place other than that, but we'll see. I am predicting we will see Mobius again next week. I really do think we were. All right. Yasmar Hidalgo writes, odd that it opens with Ravona speaking to timekeepers only to find out that they are puppets. She didn't know. I guess episode 3 was to show Loki falling in love. Again, they should have been able to do 5, 6, 7, or 8 different things in a 40-minute episode instead of just one thing, so I don't give them a pass for that. I really don't. I don't give them a pass for that at all. As far as, is Ravona as surprised as we were? Maybe. Remember, when Ravona walks into the timekeeper's chamber, we didn't see her actually talking to them, right? It's very possible she could have walked into the chamber, walked right past the timekeepers, and there's Kang the Conqueror behind the timekeepers, and she talked to him there. Or another Loki variant, she talked to him there. Or another Mobius variant. Maybe a Mobius variant is behind this whole thing. I don't know. Whatever. But I straight up don't know. Right now, I just straight up do not know if Ravona knows that the timekeepers were just the puppet things, or if she's been in on it. I just don't know. So we'll see. We'll see. All right. Next up. That was Yasmir. Next up, we have Cam K writes, do you think there's a chance that there's a Mobius behind this all? Renslayer seemed to have been fond of him. I know they had a long friendship. It's funny you say, I was just saying that. Like, I suppose it would be a very Marvel thing for us to find out it's a Mobius variant instead of a Kang or a Loki variant or something. We'll just file that one under another possibility. We'll see. All right, next up. A little detail I picked up on was Mobius mentioning vampires, but overall, sorry, this is Jordan. What did I say this is from? This is from Jord MCHG. A little detail I picked up on was Mobius mentioning vampires, but overall, a roller coaster of emotions of an episode. I loved it. I completely agree. I completely agree. I just thought it was fantastic. Now, look, I got to address this. Somebody kind of brain dead in the live chat named Cooper is saying, John, in Mandalorian, you said the journey is the story. How could? Because in the Mandalorian, every episode was its own story, even when it didn't connect to the bigger overarching story. That episode last week was just a waste of fucking time. Like, they start off, oh, we're on a planet that a moon is going to crash into it. And it ends with, oh, we're on a planet that the moon is going to crash into it. And nothing happens. Nothing happens. Loki, the god of mischief who can lift buildings. Oh, average guys can get him and throw him off a train. There was nothing happens. In The Mandalorian, every episode was like old Westerns. They all had their own, each episode had their own beginning, middle, and end with a fulfilling and satisfying story. And I got tired of people complaining, oh, this story didn't do a lot for the main overarching plot. And I would have been fine with that too, with Loki. I would have been fine with that with Loki if it was actually telling a story. Even if that story in episode 3 was separate from everything else, that would have been fine. But it was just a waste of fucking time. It was just a complete waste of time, in my opinion. At any rate, other people may think differently. But yeah, anyway, that's just kind of my take on that. Okay, next up. Where are we at? We are at Cam5326, who writes, So who is really behind the TVA? That is the billion-dollar question right now. Looking over and crafting the MCU timeline, got to be none other than Kevin Feige. Cameo coming up for sure. It would be damn interesting. I mean, okay, obviously they'll never do this. Obviously they will never, ever, ever, ever do this. If they were to actually get the man behind the curtain, Wizard of Oz kind of moment, and they find out it is actually just Kevin Feige, I don't know if I would hate that or I don't know if I would love that. I don't know. I'm a little bit torn. It would be all at the same time ridiculous and at the same time awesome. Ridiculous and awesome at the same time. And you know what? I've decided, no, I hope they don't do that. That wouldn't be a cool thing for them to do. But oh my God, it would probably make the internet blow up if they did. All right, next up. We go to Cam K, who writes, here's something to think about. Do you think Loki and Mobius will manage to make it back alone? Or do you think all the variants will be brought back? I can't see all the variants being brought back. I mean, that's a possibility. But that seems very, very problematic. But I do think, because I don't think we're going to suddenly see 1,000 Lokis running around. Obviously, I think we're going to get Mobius is going to be back. Obviously, I think Loki is coming back, clearly. But my guess right now, and it's just an unfounded guess. My guess is that it's just going to be those two. That's my guess. I could be wrong. I'm not willing to bet any money on that, but that's my guess at the moment. All right. Next up, Steel Smith writes, wow, great episode. Never trusted Ravona. By the way, we don't know Ravona's a bad guy here. She might just be trying to do the best she can, or she could be an evil, evil bastard. We'll find out. Great episode. Never trusted Ravona. She's been too sketchy from the start, and this episode proved it. Better see Mobius on a jet ski saying, wow. Yeah, do any of us have any doubt that we're going to see? Do any of us have any doubt that we're going to see Mobius on a jet ski? At some point, we're totally going to see that. All right. Marie Seifring writes, it's repeatedly asked what makes a Loki a Loki. Not being told he was adopted drives so much of our Loki's actions. That's true. I wonder if simply being told she was adopted as a child was the Nexus for Sylvie. It can't be, because if Loki, listen, if Tom Hiddleston is what the sacred timeline Loki is, then the very fact that Sylvie was born female, right there, she's the variant. Here's the confusing thing to me. The TVA should have showed up the moment she was born. Because being born female is in and of itself a variance. I don't know why it took them, however old that little girl was, 7, 8 years old. I can't remember that. I can't remember that. I can't remember what age they ultimately said she was. But I'm trying to remember. Let's go with 7. Do you guys remember? Did they specifically say how old she was? Do you guys remember actually how old she was when they said how old she was, talking to Ravona or anything like that? For whatever, I'm going to say 7. Some of you guys are saying that, they didn't say an age. All right, so let's argument's sake, I don't know, say 9, right? Why did it take them 9 years to notice a variance? Loki was born female. That's a variance. So I don't know. I hope they explain it at some point. I do. I really do hope they explain it at some point. All right. Next up. Marie Seifring also writes, definitely the over for 1 to 1.5 more Loki variants. Yep, we got right there at the end. I set the over under at 1.5. We had 4 there at the end. So, and not to mention Sylvie herself. So that went definitely on the over on that, Marie. Absolutely. All right. Next up, Johan Aglin writes, I am both agog and aghast. Loki and love at you did get my reference. I said agog and aghast on my show yesterday. I said bonus points to anybody who gets the reference. Clearly Johan does, because he says Loki is in love at last. I've never seen him ooh and ah. Anyway, Loki in love at last. Only sad thing is I had to watch this episode alone. The MCU is more fun together with friends and family. It absolutely is. It absolutely is. And by the way, agog and aghast is Marius in love at last. That's a Les Miserables reference. So good on you, Johan, for getting that. You are a cultured man, sir. Well done for getting that reference. Let's see here. Marie Seifring also writes, I'm really interested in seeing how 2 Lokis coming together causes a Nexus event large enough to be seen during an apocalypse is explained. Yeah, again, this is something they're going to have to explain. Because it doesn't matter what Sylvie and Loki did on Lamentus. That planet was about to blow up and they were about to die, and it should have caused 0 Nexus whatsoever. And it would have caused 0 Nexus whatsoever had the TVA not then gone and rescued them. You know, somebody brought that up in the pregame show yesterday. I am still beside myself. Yeah, why did they go rescue them? Why didn't they just leave them there to explode? Now, they might explain later that they needed to know answers from them, so they had to get them. Okay, but I really do hope they come back and address that later on, because it is a bit of a plot hole. It is something they got to address. Okay. Okay, next up, where are we at? We are at Johan again, who writes, Loki starts 9 a.m. in Sweden. I feel rested. Well, I'm glad you did, because the next day I'm always a bit of a wreck, Johan. I'm always a bit of a wreck, but I'm glad you get to be nice and fresh when you watch it. All right, Marie also writes, silly me apocalypse. Don't worry, Marie. Totally understood what you're saying, but very kind of you to throw in the correction there just in case it confused us. So thank you. That's very thoughtful, Marie. All right, next up, Casey McNatt writes, so if Loki is still alive after getting pruned, does that mean Mobius can still be alive? I assume absolutely. I guess we found out that pruning doesn't mean death. Yeah, because again, and I admit, I just assumed that pruning was just a euphemism for killing them, right? I just assumed that's what that meant. But apparently it doesn't. Apparently it doesn't. So we'll see. And by the way, does that mean TVA isn't actually all that evil if they're not actually killing variants, but sending them to some other, I don't know, limbo kind of place? I don't know. Again, many more answers to come. We've only got 2 episodes left, though. Think about that. We've only got 2 episodes left now. I wish these MCU shows were longer. I really do. Anyway, next up. So that was Casey McNatt. Next up, Benny95 writes, I think Kang is behind this. I think that's a fairly good bet. We'll see. I think Kang is behind this. He killed the other 2 timekeepers, starting his own timeline and power that he controls, TVA, etc. through variants. It's very possible. Or it could have been that the timekeepers are a work of fiction that never existed in the first place. Or they used to be real, and like you're saying, Kang killed the other 2. Don't know. A lot of possibilities there. But again, I still think there are possibilities that exist that the person behind the TVA could be another Loki variant. I'm not saying that's what I believe it is, but I'm saying I think those are the 2 big choices right now. Kang, Loki, or something else entirely. We'll find out, Benny. Right, next up, Benny95 also writes, Keepers. I think this show will lead into Ant-Man 3. It seems odd that a show on this level would lead into Ant-Man 3. Then again, a lot of people found it odd that a character like Kang the Conqueror was going to be the antagonist in a movie like Ant-Man 3. Again, who knows? A lot of possibilities here, though. Or maybe Kang's not involved in this at all and it'll have nothing to do with Ant-Man 3. Still a lot to find out in just 2 episodes, Benny. Right, next up, Casey McNatt writes, also, who or what created the TVA and why? I have no idea. I really don't think it was Renslayer. She's either working for somebody or is brainwashed like everybody else. Well, it clearly wasn't Renslayer because she was just a foot soldier, you know, many, many years ago, because she's the one who brought in Sylvia, and Sylvia, the reason Sylvia escaped, and she got promoted up through the ranks. So she's not the creator. Who it is, no idea. Again, Kang is a theory, a Loki variant's a theory, a Mobius character variant is a theory, or of course Mephisto. I'm just surprised we haven't heard 18 theories about Mephisto being the creator yet, but we'll find that out. All right, next up. Casey McNatt also writes, did you see at the end credits there was an alligator Loki? Yep. Either that or that was Kid Loki's pet. Maybe there's a chance of seeing Frog Thor, LOL. Absolutely. No, because that little alligator, it had the Loki horns on. That's alligator Loki. I never thought I would say those words in my life. That's alligator Loki. I never thought I would say that. But yeah, it was, listen, there's so much to unpack from that final image. I'm not even sure where to start, to be honest with you. All right. Next up, Arpan Acharya writes, androids, huh? The biggest question now, who created the TVA and why Sylvie was arrested. More answers yet to come. We are back to WandaVision days. Well, I mean, Sylvie was arrested because she was a variant. It's just that simple. But why wasn't she arrested earlier? All that kind of stuff. Who's the person behind the curtain? That is now the billion-dollar question. All right, Marie Seifring writes, Loki falling in love with his variant is an interesting choice, but it does symbolize a kind of self-acceptance, I guess. If she is lovable, so is he. You know what, Marie? That's a nice way of thinking about it. That's a nice way of thinking about it. And by the way, Aaron Stanwood just sent in a super chat badge in the live chat just to be supportive. Thank you, Aaron, very much. I appreciate that, dude. That is a kinder way of looking at it, that if he can look at Sylvie and see something that is lovable, then maybe that means he himself is also lovable. If he looks at Sylvie and sees something redeemable, maybe that means that he is redeemable and he can have self-worth. That's a good way of putting it. I like a lot better than me is like, isn't that just an advanced form of masturbation? It still kind of is, but at any rate. So good observation on that, Marie. All right, next up. James Hoffman writes, two Lokis falling in love should not have created a Nexus event since they were about to die. I completely agree. In my opinion, the episode broke its own rule that nothing changes in an apocalypse, but otherwise great episode. Now, again, like what I was saying a little bit earlier, James, because I completely agree with you. But like what I was saying a little bit earlier was that we have to leave room that there are still 2 more episodes to come. That should not have created a Nexus event, but they have 2 episodes left to explain to us why it did. So let's at least leave that door open. But if they don't address that, then that is a clear contradiction to the rules this show already laid down. But again, they could very well say that there was something so exceptional about that it I don't know. We'll have to wait and see again. 2 more episodes to go. And by the way, our friend Michael Appleby also just sends in a super chat badge in the live chat just to be supportive. Thank you, man. I really appreciate that very much, very much. It's very generous and very kind of you, dude. All right. Next up. We are at Dragon 10, who writes, another jaw-dropping episode. I knew the pruning sticks were teleportation devices as soon as Loki got hit, though. I hope we get justice for Mobius. I'm not going to lie. I wish I could say that I knew it too, but I didn't. I really thought, oh my God, they killed Loki. Now it's all going to be about her. But nope, then they did the post-credit scene and bam, Dragon 10. It was such a great moment when he wakes up and then Richard E. Grant in that classic comic book Loki costume. Dear heavens, that thing was amazing. All right, next up, Isaiah Campbell writes, I honestly believe last episode could have ended with how this episode started, with both Lokis getting arrested. Last week was such a waste overall. I completely agree, Isaiah. Last week was listen, when you've only got 6 episodes in a show, you have no excuse for having episodes like that. Now listen, I love Loki. I'm loving this show. I am. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to criticize what deserves to be criticized. That was a bad episode. They could have done it many different ways, but that's just me. All right, thanks for sharing that, Isaiah. Next up, Suthius writes, it was androids all along. Now, I don't think we're going to find out it was androids. Somebody built those animatronics, those Disneyland animatronics. Somebody built them. We'll find out who, Suthius. All right, Tony Hurd writes, answered some questions while raising more. All in all, I really enjoyed this episode. And that is very, very WandaVision-ish of this show. Answer a couple questions, raise a whole bunch more. That is what a show like this should do. That is when a show is really firing on all cylinders and really hitting its stride, when it is answering some questions and raising new ones, constantly in that cycle until you head to your climax and your finale and your final episode. That's what they did here, and that's part of the reason why I thought it worked so damn well. All right, next up. We've got Suthius who writes, I busted out laughing upon seeing Richard E. Grant. Dude, that was awesome. I was too overwhelmed with feeling the awesomeness of that than to feel to laugh. I just couldn't laugh. I was just overwhelmed with awesomeness. All right, Suthius also writes, so clearly Loki is falling in love with Sylvie and was trying to tell her how he felt before he got pruned. I think episode 3 is essential for that. Again, yes, that becomes a useful element of episode 3, but it does not excuse that they did literally nothing else in that episode. It was a throwaway waste of an episode. You could have done all of that character bonding with a Mandalorian-like episode, where you could have actually made a legitimate story out of that episode of them on Lamentus, and they meet a person who says, I can get you here, but to do that, I need to get this. And so Loki and Sylvie need to go on this like short-term little adventure, much like a role-playing game. And they need to go on this quest and accomplish that. Then once they accomplish that, they go back to that person they met and said, here, we were able to retrieve this for you that you needed. Now you get us on this thing and blah, blah, blah. And they could have had 100 other things come up and a lot of other important details. They could have answered some questions and raised some new questions, all while at the same time exhibiting a bond starting to develop between Loki and Sylvie. Instead, they were like, we don't know how to do that. Let's just make the whole episode Loki and Sylvie talking and have it being nowhere near as interesting as Loki and Mobius talking. And it's unfortunate, but man, it is what it is. Whatever. It's in the past. Episode 4 was awesome, and we're right back on track. All right, next up. Tony Hurd writes, I don't think Ravona is the big bad, but she definitely knows more than anyone at the TVA. Completely agree with you there, dude. Maybe she's also being lied to by somebody else. See, it's either that Ravona, when it comes to Ravona, it's either that she is completely bought into the lie. So there's that. Or number 2, that she is in league with whoever is behind everything. That's why a lot of people think it's Kang, because there's a connection between those characters in the comics. Or 3, she is the big bad. Again, I think episode 4 rules out that she's the big bad. I think episode 4 rules that out, because we saw that she has come up through the ranks, right? So it's either she's just completely bought into the lie, or B, she is in league with whoever is actually behind the TVA. Those are our biggest options right now. We'll see where they go with it. Okay, next up. Casey McNatt writes, what do you think Sylvie's Nexus event was? Again, I think it was just that she was born female. I mean, obviously that is a variance from what the sacred timeline Loki is supposed to be and supposed to look like. That's my guess at any rate. All right, next up. Suthius writes, spending of pruning. I'm going to guess you mean speaking of pruning. Anyway, do you die? Apparently not. Or do you get sent to what appears to be a place in time where everyone seems to be dumped there, hence credit scene? Yeah, that's probably more applicable. There's probably a unique place that all Loki variants go. There's probably a unique place that all B-15 variants go. There's probably a unique place that all Ravona variants go. There's probably a place where all Mobius. I mean, again, that's just speculating. They haven't really given us any information on that at this point, but I think that's our best guess right now. We'll see what they introduce in the next episode. All right. Next up, Daniel Luna writes, so B-15 did end up helping out Loki and Sylvie. I got so hyped when she showed up to assist them. Yeah, that was great when she came through the doors. And this episode was for sure better than episode 3. Yeah, I mean, it might be the best episode of the show so far. Now, I'm not going to, I'm not one of these, the latest thing is the best thing ever. Because, man, I still love episodes 1 and episodes 2. But I don't know, you got to give me a few more days to think about it. Give me a few more days to think about it, and I very well could come to the same conclusion that you did, that episode 4 has been the best so far. But again, I want to just let it sit and ruminate a little bit, and then we'll come back to that a little bit later. All right, next up, we've got Suthius writes, in that place, I think Loki will find Mobius and C20. See, I don't think so. Now, you could very well be right. You could absolutely be right. But I don't think so, because obviously this is a very Loki place. A destroyed New York is the kind of the location of his biggest failure, right? In trying to take over the world and attack the Avengers there and everything like that. There's other Lokis there just waiting for him when he got there. So I don't see why Mobius would be sent to the same place that Loki did, or why B20 would be sent to the same place that Loki did. So I don't think they're going to be there, but you could be right. That's just why I don't think so right now, but I'm not willing to bet any money on that. All right, next up, Casey McNatt writes, where do we go? Do you think Renslayer knew about the Time Lords being androids? It's a coin toss for me right now. It totally is. She was still reporting to them, but she didn't seem phased when it was revealed. Now, again, what makes it very nebulous is the fact that in the opening of the show, she goes to the timekeepers, but we never see her actually talking to them. Right? That's key, because that means both options are still on the table. She either did talk to them thinking they were real, or she walked right past them to talk to whoever's behind the curtain. We just don't know. Right now, if I had to bet one shiny Canadian loony dollar, if I had to bet one loony on this, for my American friends, the loony is the name of the Canadian dollar. Anyway, if I had to bet one shiny dollar on it, my guess would be that she spoke to the animatronics, that she thinks they're real. But again, I'm not really willing to bet on that, because it could very easily go the other way. There's just not enough information yet. There's just not enough info yet. All right. Next up, Daniel Luna writes, how funny in episode 1, Loki was asked if he was a robot or not, but the timekeepers ended up being androids. I still have a feeling they are real. By the way, I love that scene in episode 1. Wait a minute. What if I am an android? And what happens if I am an android? You'll melt from the inside out. And then he stops and doubts himself, which is pretty funny. I doubt that has anything to do with the timekeepers, but I didn't even think about that connection, Daniel. That's actually a pretty good observation. All right, next up, we've got Suthius, who writes, the scene where Mobius gets caught. Quicksilver shows up, looks into the camera and says, you didn't see that coming? That's not, actually, you know what? That was a pretty good Quicksilver. You didn't see that coming? Well, I'm not very good at impressions. At any rate, poor Mobius. Love Loki's reaction. Yeah, Loki's reaction was great. And I really felt it. And I'll be honest with you. Listen, I'm not going to lie. I could sit here and tell you, oh yeah, I knew that when they got pruned, they were still alive. I didn't. And when they killed Mobius, I thought, you mother effers, you just killed one of the, other than Tom Hiddleston, you just killed the best part of this show. And I felt so bad for Loki, that Loki just legitimately lost somebody and all that kind of stuff. And it wasn't until the post-credit scene that I was like, okay, Mobius will be back. And I felt better about it at that point. All right, next up, The Relaxing Reef writes, best Marvel episode yet. Sylvie confirmed as Lady Loki, plus old Loki, Kang behind it. Glorious. More Loki self-kissed? Self-kissed? Do you mean self-reflection? I don't know. Please, over 120% Loki plus Sylvie are in Ant-Man 3. I'm going to go under 20% on that. I don't believe there's any way that Tom Hiddleston being actually cast in Ant-Man 3 is something that would be able to be kept under wraps at this point. I mean, knowing that we know that Kang is in Ant-Man 3, right? So I think we would have known if Loki was in there or not. I don't see Loki and Ant-Man having good on-screen chemistry. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm completely wrong and you're completely right. I mean, it wouldn't be outside of the realm of possibility, Relaxing Reef. So I will keep that in mind. I will keep your thought there in mind and see where we're heading with this. All right, next up. Where are we at? Al Rensha writes, hey, John, all I want now is for all Loki variants to team up with Mobius and C-15 variants and storm the TVA. It would be glorious. Oh, I think we're going to have some kind of Braveheart, they can never take our freedom moment. I'm just waiting for that to happen. Or a virtual army of Lokis storm the castle. I think that would be awesome. I think that would be absolutely awesome. All right, next up. That was Al Renshaw. Next up, we got Casey McNatt, who writes, I might be the only one, but I'd like to know what kind of mischief Loki caused being an alligator. I mean, look, like somebody mentioned earlier, maybe the alligator Loki or crocodile Loki or Croaky is just the young Loki's pet. Maybe. But it did have the horns on, so I'm guessing it is. It'd be interesting to see. I hope to see if it talks. I want to see if it talks. I hope that in episode 5, we see little Croaky talk. I want to see that. All right. Next up, Tony Hurd writes, I like the juxtaposition of Loki's introduction to the TVA, which was humorous, to Sylvie's, which was not. I mean, yeah, but remember, we only got to see brief moments of Sylvie being brought to the TVA, right? Like, it was very much done in a very, very, very Cole's Notes, very rapid succession way. Who knows? Maybe there was humorous moments. But then again, looking back at what Loki arrives at the TVA, the thing that makes the moments funny is him. So if a scared little girl getting there, maybe that's not as funny. But you're right. The juxtaposition was kind of interesting. All right. Tony Hurd also writes, I find it disheartening that a person is labeled a variant simply by being the wrong gender, something they have no control over. Yeah, but remember, Tony, that according to this thing, I mean, just showing up late to work when you weren't supposed to show up late to work, anything can make you a variant. It's not even your choices. See, that's the funny thing. Loki didn't choose to break any of the TVA's rules. He didn't even know the TVA existed. He was just standing there arrested, saw an opportunity to escape, picked up the Tesseract, something he's had before, used it to escape. I mean, he was like literally just doing what he would normally do. He didn't realize he was causing a break in the timeline, that he was literally becoming a variant. So being born the wrong gender is a massive variance. Besides, like, hey, on this day, you're supposed to wake up, have your coffee, get on the bus, and then get to work on time. But for some reason in this thing, the bus driver, instead of getting through the light on time, slowed down and stopped at the stop sign, which caused another delay. And that ended up meaning you got to work late. And because you got to work late, boom, variance happened and it started a Nexus event. I mean, so it can be anything. It can be anything. And that is disheartening. It's not even necessarily people doing something wrong. Just they're a variant. All right. Next up, we've got Marie Seifring, who writes, maybe Sylvie's Nexus event was that originally Sylvie was born male, but decided she wanted to be female. Loki is a shapeshifter. That's not a bad theory. That's not a bad theory. That's actually maybe a pretty... Look, I'm going to go right now with the notion that she was indeed born female. I'm going to go with the assumption. But if... Because again, my problem with that idea is that if she was born female, why did the TVA not show up instantly? But if she had just decided that, you know what, I'm going to be a little girl now. Boom! And then he's a little girl. And that's not what happened to all the other Lokis in the timeline. Maybe that's it. I don't know how big of a chance of that particular theory has of being true, but it's not a bad theory. It's not bad. Let's keep our eyes on that, Marie. All right. Let's keep going here. Next up, we got Marie Seifring, who also writes, on Lamentis, the timeline started to spike just as the moon was about to break up. Maybe them dying together caused some kind of break in continuity. Oh, shit, Marie, dropping wisdom bombs here today. Okay, you know what? Let's follow that for a second. Because I've been saying here, listen, this is a plot hole. Loki and Sylvie falling in love is causing a giant Nexus event. What if that's not what was causing the Nexus event? Because I'm sitting here saying that's a plot hole because the planet's about to be destroyed and they're about to die. That means no variance. The TVA should never been able to find them. But what if Loki and Sylvie are not supposed to die on Lamentis and they were about to die, hence a giant spike in a Nexus event? That is something I had not considered. That is something I had not considered. Interesting. I'm not saying I buy it. I'm not saying I buy it yet, but That is interesting. But again, listen, like I said before, they have 2 more episodes to kind of explain what was that whole Nexus spike about, because it theoretically shouldn't have been there. But if them dying on that planet is not what's supposed to happen, maybe that's what caused, I don't know. Interesting theory, Marie. Let's keep our eyes on that. All right. Next up, Casey McNatt writes, they focused real hard on that ship that young Sylvie was playing with before her time got reset. Do you think that comes into play at some point? I'm not going to lie to you, Casey. I didn't really notice that. I personally didn't notice that. So I'm going to guess that no. I'm going to guess, just purely a guess. I'm going to guess that no, that does not come play. That doesn't come to play later on. Again, that's just me guessing. It very well could come into play later on. Let's see if you're right about that. All right, next up, Casey also writes, Mobius picked up a trick or two hanging out with Loki, telling Loki that Sylvie got pruned just to get some answers. You know what I loved as well? When Loki's walking out and says, you're the biggest liar here. And he says, why? Because I told you Sylvie was dead. And I love what Loki says. He goes, no, that I respect. It's just that you're lying to yourself. That line that Loki says when he says, yeah, why? Because I told you Sylvie was dead? No, that I can respect. I like that line. That was a great line. I respect that. Telling me that lie to try to manipulate me, that I respect that. That was actually pretty cool. It gave us a little bit of an insight into Loki there. I thought that was a great line. All right, next up. Marco, oh God, I'm going to mispronounce this. Marco Bello Brajic writes, you might be right, John, in that if Sylvie was Lady Loki, she'd be a variant from birth. Yeah. This episode didn't really definitively say so, but hinted at it. Again, we'll have to wait and see. Obviously, Sylvie is asking the questions. Why was I brought in? So maybe it's something else. I like what Marie was saying earlier. What if she was not born that way? What if she was born the same way Tom Hiddleston's Loki was born, but then just suddenly decided to change to female, and that caused a variance? Possible. It's possible, but I think we're going to get the answers to that, Marco, sooner rather than later. There are only 2 episodes left after all. Okay, James Argento writes, actor who played Kid Sylvie was young Ray in Force Awakens. I did not know that. Is that true? Guys in the live chat, do you know if that's true? Because that's actually pretty cool if that's true. The actor who played Kid Sylvie was young Ray in Force Awakens. Also, the way Ravona stabbed Loki is the same way Loki stabbed Coulson in Avengers. Yeah, except it was with a completely different weapon. But people like Daria, Bat Spider, Schlich, Gabriella, all in the live chat are saying, yes, that I had no idea. That's the same kid who played. Okay, that's a cool little bit of trivia there, guys. Never knew that. Thanks for sharing that, James. And thank you, everybody in the live chat, for confirming that. I had no idea. I love it when I learn new things on here. Thank you, guys. All right. Anton Riley writes, that's how you get back on track. I get it now that episode 3 was supposed to develop Loki and Sylvie's relationship, but it felt stagnant at some places story-wise. No, again, it was a complete waste. You should have been able to show Loki and Sylvie developing a bond while doing many other real storytelling things. Instead, it was just a waste. And they should have done that episode much better. I still consider episode 3 to be a really poor installment. But you're right. They came back with a vengeance in episode 4. Loved it. All right, next up. Anton also writes, AKA filler. Plus, we didn't really know how much that episode would mean until the next one. One of the drawbacks from weekly shows dropping is bad episodes leave a longer taste in our mouths. I mean, that's true. Look, one of the big advantages, there's 2 sides to every coin, right? One of the big advantages to weekly episodes is that we get when we get an episode like episode 4, we get a whole week to buzz about, geek out over, theorize, speculate about, blah, blah. And it just builds like it did from episode 1 to episode 2 and from episode 2 to episode 3. It just allows us to really relish in it, share our enthusiasm. More people jump on board. It's great. Now, the flip side of that coin is that when you have a subpar episode like episode 3, it gives you a whole week to kind of stew in it. But for me, if you guys remember last week, for me, yeah, I didn't like episode 3, but I said all it does is make me more excited for episode 4. Because we got a lot of ground to cover. We only got 3 episodes left. They're going to get back on track. Obviously, episodes 1 and 2 were great, so they know how to make this show great. Episode 3 was a downer, whatever. It just makes me more excited for episode 4, and they delivered in spades, and I'm so glad they did. All right, thanks for that, Anton. Next up, Fanimator writes, Loki episode 4 was the best episode by far. I need some time to think about that, but it was damn good. So many twists and turns. I knew that the TVA was a BS organization. Loki has finally hooked me and might be better than WandaVision. Fantastic episode. Yeah, listen, we're only 4 episodes into Loki. For me, WandaVision is still the best show they've done so far. Ask me that question again after 2 more episodes and we've wrapped up Loki. Maybe Loki will take it over at that point. I'm still like, and I really enjoyed Falcon and Winter Soldier too, obviously, but WandaVision to me is still the best one, but we'll see. We'll get there. But this episode, Fanimator, dude, it was so good. It was just such a good piece of content online. It was great fun watching it. Great fun watching it. All right, Jason E. Riaz writes, man, that last scene felt so anticlimactic. Really? The fake timekeepers were so corny, and B20 made it look easy to get up there. Well, B20 has the authority to get up there. Right? You know what? I keep confusing. Guys, help me out in the live chat. I keep confusing things. Forgive me. I keep confusing B15 and B20. One of them was the girl that they put to death or pruned. One of them was the commander, the one that put the collar on Loki. Which is which? Which one is the commander? B15? S-Beam, Ray White. It's C20 and B15. See, look, sometimes I don't pay such good attention. So B15 is the commander. C20 is the one that got pruned. Okay, so sorry, I mixed that up a little. I get it mixed up a little bit here. Forgive me for that. Little number detail there, but it's an important one. And so what it was, B15 made it look easy to get there. Yeah, but she's a commander. She has that authority to just go in there and do that. So I didn't feel that scene was anticlimactic at all. Because we found out if the timekeepers are what they were presented to be. Finding out the answer to me wasn't anticlimactic. I mean, you felt it was anticlimactic, and I don't mean in any way to devalue what your experience with the show was. Your experience is your experience with it. So I'm not trying to devalue your experience in any way. I'm just saying for me, it very much was not anticlimactic. I thought it was a hell of a moment, but that's just me. All right. Thanks for sharing your thoughts on that, Jason. Next up, Ashley Bree writes, hey, first time super chatting. Thank you for doing that, Ashley. Thanks for being here. That episode made up for last week's in my head. Absolutely 100% agree. Also total Wizard of Oz moment. Once we see who's behind the curtain, we'll get that Wizard of Oz moment. Mobius dying and Sylvie asking, you okay? I'm telling you, again, the physical reaction I had, Ashley. The physical reaction I had when we saw Mobius die. It was not fun. Not fun. I was not happy. Not a happy, campy person. Not in the least. But there were several moments like that in the episode, which just made it so great to watch. So much fun watching. Anyway, thanks for being here, Ashley. Appreciate that. Okay, where are we at now? We're at Obs626, who writes, could Ralph Bonner be a variant of X-Men's Quicksilver? Obviously not. So in the sacred timeline, he's a normal guy living in Westview, but in another timeline, the X-Men exist and he's a part of them. Well, if that was the case, then one of them would have immediately been pulled out of the timeline and pruned. So no, Ralph Bonner is not a variant of the X-Men's Quicksilver. So no, there's not. Next up, Cam K writes, now we know where Vision went in the WandaVision, LOL. You think the parallel was intentional with both Loki and Vision disappearing in front of love? You know what? That's not a bad observation. I don't think so, though. I really don't think there was a connection there. And I don't think there was a parallel either. I mean, one of the interesting things, what made the WandaVision part so interesting was it was Wanda's choice. It's a choice she had to make, and it was the right choice to make, but it still was her choice to shut down the Hex, thus eliminating this Vision and those children. an impossible decision, a tough decision, but it was the right decision to make. Whereas in Loki, it's a very different set of circumstances. Very different set of circumstances. So I like the question. I like where your head's at. I just don't personally see it that way myself. But there could be something there. Who knows? All right, next up. We got Emily S. who writes, I was disappointed by this episode. They made the timekeepers look like Chuck E. Cheese animatronic characters. Listen, I can't agree because when they were talking, I thought they were real. And maybe you didn't. You saw right through it. You knew immediately that was animatronic nonsense jallywaggon going on. I didn't. I'm like, so they are real? Like, I'm not going to lie. I bought into it. Maybe I'm a sucker, but I bought into it. So I did not see the animatronics. I didn't. So now I knew it was a possibility for sure. But until they threw that sword and cut off one of the heads, I honestly didn't know. I didn't know for sure. So it worked on me, Emily. You just saw through it better than I did. Okay. We are now at Ismail Montoya, who writes, what an episode, John. Is it safe to unofficially conclude that the Loki villain is either Kang or a Loki variant? That's exactly what I was saying a bit earlier, man. I'm running out of names who have the power to control time as it's being done. Let me say this. Whoever is behind the TVA, and again, I believe the vast chance here is that it is either Kang or a Loki variant, but doesn't necessarily have to be somebody who has control over time. The TVA has devices and technology that allows them to open portals and walk through time and stuff like that. So whoever is behind the TVA doesn't necessarily need to be an all-powerful being like a Kang or whatever. It doesn't necessarily need to be a person with a superpower of time travel or anything like that. Now I'm seeing Manpreet in the same, maybe it's the Living Tribunal in the live chat. There have been several people pointing out that maybe we're going to have the Living Tribunal. That seems a little big to bring in just a final 2 episodes of a show. So I'm doubting that's the case. But it could be another one of those options. You never know. We'll find out soon enough. All right, next up, Ismail also writes, by the way, 4th time Loki dies and has come back. I might be 5th. I love the fact that they poke fun at it too. When Loki walks into the timekeepers and they're like, oh, before you die, he's like, I've been killed a lot of times. I've lost count. Because it's the Marvel fake death universe. But I love the fact that they were self-aware enough to throw that line in there when he walked in. I've lost count of how many times I've been killed. I thought that was great. All right, next up. Epic Dub Time just send in a super chat badge to be supportive. Thank you, Epic Dub Time. These were ones that came in during the John Campea Show earlier. Okay, so let's get back. Epic Dub Time writes in, loved this episode. I literally squealed when I saw Sif. I love seeing Jamie Alexander back in there. When I saw Sif on screen. Oh, and by the way, B-15 is such a badass. She absolutely is. The post-credit scene was fire. Cannot wait for next episode. Loki's Whispers Assemble. Loki's Assemble. Look, I'm not one of these people who says they better do this or I'm not going to like it. But there's a little part of my soul that right now is getting real damn excited about the idea of like a battalion of Lokis assaulting the TVA. I'm not saying they need to do it. I'm not saying they have to do it. I'm not saying I'm not going to like it unless they do that. But there's a little part of me that's kind of holding out hope that we see a battalion of Lokis storming the castle. I really would like to see that. All right, next up, K Major writes, when Mobius got pruned, for half a second I was like, no. Then I was like, wait, that's freaking Owen Wilson. You don't prune. Oh, boom, another dimension. The possibilities endless in who we may see. Listen, I had no doubt they could have killed Owen Wilson right there. It's not like Owen Wilson was Captain America. It's not like Agent Mobius is Thor. They very easily could have killed him right then and there. And that's why I kind of bought it when they did. I bought into it. Until we saw Loki wake up in that destroyed New York with the other Lokis, I had bought into it that, oh my God, they just killed Kenny. They just killed Mobius. You bastards! I really did buy into it. So even though it was Owen Wilson. All right, thanks for that, K Major. Okay, next up. Bubble Baths writes, 1 of 3. Hey, John. I think the Nexus event was going to be them dying. That's what somebody else was just saying too. Not loving each other. That's why it rapidly increased the closer they came to death. Yep. I believe this hints at them dying in the last episode, which will ultimately be what brings down the TVA, redlining the timeline into multiverse. Also, Ravona sucks. How dare she do my boy Mobius dirty like that? Was so shocked, and he's only been around for like 2 episodes. Great character. Love the character. Love the character. And you know, this isn't... Guys, help me out in the live chat. What was the name of the head of S.W.O.R.D. in WandaVision? What was his name again? The one that I kept saying, he's not necessarily evil. He's a dick, but he's not necessarily evil. What was his name again? Agent Hayward. Thank you, Tom. Gemavir, Aiden, Maranta, Casinema, a bunch of other people throwing in there. Thank you guys for putting that in the live chat. Hayward, right? Isn't the same situation, because I will still argue and win, just to let you know I'll win the argument, that Hayward was not necessarily evil. He wasn't necessarily a villain. You can be an antagonist and not be a villain. And he was a dick. He was a giant dick. But I still believe at the core, Hayward was ultimately doing what he thought was best for the country and for the world. He really thought he was doing what was best for the world and for the country, and I don't think he had evil intent. A lot of people argue with me about that. That's fine. Ravona, though, although I just recently said the jury for me is still out on her a little bit. That scene, though, where she just cold does Mobius dirty like that. He's a pretty big jerk. She's a pretty big jerk. And now again, I don't know if it's because she's a part of the evil plan or whether it's because she is just so wholeheartedly bought into the lie of what the TVA is. And she's so committed to the TVA and the lie of it that she's just blindly doing what she thought was literally the right thing to do. Or whether she's part evil and part of the evil plan and she's in on it and the whole thing. I don't know the answer to that yet. That was pretty cold what she did to our boy Mobius. That was pretty damn cold. All right, next up. So that was, but thanks for writing that in, Bubble Baz. Appreciate it. K Major writes, who are the timekeepers? Damn it, I ain't playing these games. Yeah, again, I don't, again, look, we talked about this possibility for weeks. This could be, we've said for weeks, a lot of you guys said it, I've been saying it, a lot of us have been saying it for weeks, that this could be a Wizard of Oz, there's a man behind the curtain situation. And now we know that's what it is. Who's behind the curtain? Kang, a Loki variant, a Mobius variant, Mephisto, Quicksilver, Professor X, Magneto. I mean, obviously not Professor X or Magneto, but who is the person behind the curtain? We'll find that out. That'll be the final big reveal of the show, I think. We'll find out, though. All right, next up. Cam K writes, imagine playing Kid Loki. The director comes up to you and says, so we are going to need you to put an alligator on your lap. Yeah, I'm guessing with a child actor, it was either A, very, very thoroughly trained alligator, or B, it wasn't a real alligator. I'm doubting they just took some wild alligator and threw it on a kid's lap. But yeah, you know what though? The funny thing is, a kid would have loved that. If I was an 8-year-old kid and you said, you want to hold an alligator on your lap? I would have been, hell yeah! Because I wouldn't have been smart enough. Because kids are stupid, you see. Wouldn't have been smart enough to know that's a bad idea. But the kid probably loved the idea. Or the croc, or whatever it is. All right, next up. Magic K says, is this hell? Am I dead? Not yet, but you will be unless eggs get eaten with ketchup. Oh, you're a disgusting, awful human being, Magic K. You're a bad, bad person, and your parents are ashamed of you. They're not really, just saying. All right, next up. Sloth is Legend writes, let's do a quick theory checklist. Sylvie equals Loki variant, confirmed. That part is now confirmed. Timekeepers are a ruse, confirmed. See, here's the thing about that. The timekeepers, as they have been presented to us, are a ruse. There is still something or somebody behind the curtain that are running the show. In other words, they're the timekeepers in many ways. What and how they are, we don't know. They may not be the all-powerful Wizard of Oz, but there was still a man behind the curtain. So we still got to see how that part resolves. We still got to see that. Anyway, Ravona evil / Sylvie good equals confirmed. Wow. Again, I don't buy into either of those being confirmed. I'm not buying in that Sylvie is good. Not saying she's not. I'm saying I'm not completely bought into that. And I'm not completely bought into Ravona is evil either. I think there's still other possibilities on there, but we're heading in directions. We're starting to get revelations here. So we'll see where we go. All right. Ismael Montoya writes, the power of love between two Lokis is capable of breaking whatever the TVA is trying to stop. Sounds poetic, but is the TVA trying to stop love? No, I don't think that has anything to do. I don't think the whole grand scheme of the TVA is to prevent two Loki variants from meeting and engaging. I don't think that's the point of the TVA. At least not yet at this point. I don't think that's the point of it, but a couple of people have been suggesting here that the whole Nexus event was them going to die, not them falling in love. But anyway, we'll see where that goes. All right, guys, this will be the last question that I'm going to take before we take a short break. I did a 2-hour show earlier today already, so my throat is a little bit strained. We've been going for a little over an hour and 10 minutes now with this spoiler discussion. So we're going to take this one last question. Then we're going to take a quick 5-minute break. Give me a chance to rest the vocal cords a bit, stretch my legs, grab another refill of the drink, give you guys a chance to use the bathroom and talk amongst yourselves. So don't go anywhere when we take our break. Hang around because we'll be right back. But let's do one more question before we take that break. Connor B writes, I was about to say the timekeepers CGI looked a little rough, but then it makes sense considering they were fake all along. Yeah, I mean, it was very... Look, like I said earlier, I was fooled. Well, I knew it's possible that they were animatronics, but I couldn't tell. I was not able to just look at them instantly and say, oh, they're obviously just like puppets. I didn't think that. So it was fine. But even I thought it could look better. It could look better. But you're right. Now it kind of totally makes sense about how they looked and why they looked the way that they look. So, yeah, good observation on that. You're right about that, Connor. All right, guys. Listen, we've been going for a little over an hour and 10 minutes to go right now. We still have a lot to get through, so buckle in. Guys, go run, take a bathroom break, talk amongst yourselves, maybe run, grab a bite to eat, and then come on back, bunker down. We got a whole lot more to go through. Don't go anywhere, guys. Give us about 5 minutes, and we will be right back. All right, guys, and we are back. Thank you so much for your patience and indulgence as we took a little bit of a break there. Going to try to do one every hour. So glad to have so many of you guys joining us for this live stream. There's over 2,000 of us in the live stream right now. Good to have you guys here talking Loki episode 4, which is so damn effing good. Anyway, let's keep on going with you. You guys are wanting to talk about with Loki episode 4. Connor B writes, I don't want to start another Mephisto frantic theory, but surely Kang is most likely behind this now. I can't think of who else would be. Well, I mean, we got to be careful with, well, I can't think of who else it would be, therefore it must be the only person we're thinking of, right? Again, I agree that I think the two most likely scenarios here are either Kang or a Loki variant that are behind everything. It's one of those two, probably, but we cannot discount the fact that just because we can't think of who else it might be, that it can't be somebody else entirely. It could be somebody else entirely, right? So we'll have to, whether that's another Mobius variant or something else altogether, we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, Kang is one of absolutely the big, strong contenders right now. We'll see where that goes. Okay, next up. Han Solo, sent in his $20 super chat. Thank you, Han, for supporting our channel on that level, man. You have to love yourself first, is what they always say. Is the TVA pruning timelines with happy and not forever alone Lokis? Maybe that Loki is one who doesn't help the Avengers reach their potential and gets things done. I mean, I don't know about that because then what's the point of all the other variants that have been captured? Like, remember, everybody in the TVA is a variant. And there have been many variants that they've caught and stuff like that. So I don't know if that, I mean, listen, that might very well, Han, that may very well be the moral of the story, right? And at the end of this thing, it might actually be the full circle of Loki's redemption where he finally comes to accept himself, right? That could be where this is going, and that could be the moral of the story. But I don't think that's actually the narrative catch. I don't think that's the narrative point, at least not right now. I don't think that's the narrative point at the moment. But I like that you're thinking outside the box like that, Han. That's a good approach. And again, thank you for supporting our channel on that level very much. All right, Magic K writes, theory. Sylvie is a Loki variant created by Kang so that she is a Loki and Timekeeper's daughter all at the same time. What do you think? I'm not buying into that. How does Kang make a Loki variant? I mean, listen, it depends. Remember, the Kang in the comic books is different from whatever Kang they're going to bring into the movies. So who knows what kind of power that has. But that doesn't really seem to make any sense as to why. You have to answer the question why. When proposing any kind of a theory, and this is what I always stumble on myself, is, okay, that's a great theory, Campea, but why would that be the case? Oh, I'm not really sure. It just doesn't seem to make sense to me. So listen, let's file that one away, because if it turns out that's the case, we'll remember that Magic K called it all along. But right now, I'm going to guess that doesn't line up with what we know so far, at least for now. All right, Connor B writes, I wonder why the TVA kidnapped Lady Loki / Sylvie as a child. Also, seeing Sif back was awesome and a huge surprise. Again, we've said it before. I'll say it again. I love seeing Jamie Alexander back. Why they got her seems obvious to me. As a female Loki, that makes her a variant. Or was it because she changed, whatever? But I think it has to be at one of those core things at any rate, because if the sacred timeline version of Loki is Tom Hiddleston, then her being female, complete variance. That breaks the timeline. So we'll have to see how they explain that going forward. But at least to me right now, it kind of seems like that's the way it is. We'll find out, Connor. All right, next up, we've got Mattuine writes, well, the theme of lies and deception continues. Artificial timekeepers. If Loki was sent to a realm of other Lokis, does that mean Mobius was sent to a realm of other Mobiuses? Mobi? I like that. Mobi. Hashtag work your Loki. Yeah, that was kind of fun too. Work your Loki. What you just said, Mattuine, is my operating assumption right now. Because where Loki wakes up in the post-credit scene is a very distinct Loki place. The New York that he tried to attack, surrounded instantly by other Lokis. It seems to me then that it would make sense that once you are pruned, which I guess is not synonymous with being killed, but once you are pruned, you are sent to probably a particular realm of your variants. Now, I don't know if that's true for sure. All we're going on is that little glimpse we've got in the post-credit scene, but that's my operating theory. An operating theory that can change pretty damn quick once we see the next episode, but for now, that is my operating theory. All right, next up. Magic K writes, she is both Loki and Timekeeper's daughter. I mean, oh no, I got what you were saying there, Magic K. I got what you're saying, but very kind of you to clarify just in case that messes up a bit. That's very considerate of you. Thank you for that, Magic K. All right, next up. Sloth is Legend writes, biggest narcissist in the MCU falling in love with himself equals brilliant. It totally is. It's totally consistent with what we know about the character, and it's totally brilliant. This episode is a banger in my opinion. I love it. Kid Loki next week should be great. Dude, I cannot even tell you how excited I am for next week. Even I was talking to Miss Minutes. There she is back there. I was talking to Miss Minutes before the show started. And she was, John, how's your day going? I'm like, my day's going great, Ms. Minutes. Love it. She goes, what do you think about Loki next week? I was, oh, Ms. Minutes, I'm so excited about Loki next week. She said, yeah, me too. It was a great conversation. I wish you guys could have been here to see it. It's funny how nobody else can see her talk except me. At any rate, yes, I'm very, very excited about next week. Okay, next up. Casey McNatt writes, I don't think the main villain is Kang. All right, let's hear this. We know he is coming, but this season has pretty much been about Loki variants. So I think it's likely a superior Loki is behind this. Listen, that is actually perfect logic. That's perfect logic. This show has been about Loki and Loki variants. Kang, while consistent with what we know about comic book lore, would be a little bit of a out of left field, out of nowhere kind of appearance. So it being a Loki variant that's behind everything does seem to make the most sense. But because we know Kang is in fact coming into the MCU, because again, the comics are the comics and the big stuff on the screen is the stuff on the screen. They are two totally different things. But because we know there is a connection between Ravona Renslayer and Kang in the comics, a strong connection, and the fact that time travel and the issues of time is very much associated with Kang the Conqueror, that all makes it very legitimate stuff. More legitimate than ever Mephisto or anything else was for WandaVision. Far more relevant than any Mephisto theory was for WandaVision. So that's why I'm still kind of stuck on this thing that it's either that Loki variant, maybe even the President Loki, or it's Kang, or again, something completely different. But your logic is completely sound there, Casey. Your logic is sound. Madaween writes, the timekeeper told Sylvie she was also a child of the timekeepers. What could that mean? I'm not sure. Now, it could mean that it could be a reference to the fact that she was literally brought in as a child. And maybe it's kind of timekeeper street slang of, listen, we own your ass. You're a child of the timekeepers now. It could be as simple as that. Or it could be a deeper meaning. Like they were saying, like one of the other submitters just said a few minutes ago, that what if she's Kang's daughter and Kang is the timekeeper, and therefore she literally is a variant and a child of timekeeper. Maybe. Again, I think we need more information. More information that we're clearly going to get in the next two episodes, which is just yet again one of the big reasons why I am so damn excited for episode 5 next week. I'm really stoked about it. All right, next up. Sloth is Legend writes, I agree with KC. I don't think this is Kang's deal. Hey, again, I won't be shocked if it's not. I'm just saying don't be shocked if it is, because I think it's one of the two big possibilities right now. So we'll see. All right, but KC did lay out some good logic there. All right, Black Rice 19 writes, the logical choice to be behind the TVA is Kang. Do you think at any point in this series Kang shows up as a main villain or cameo or mention? I mean, look, that's the billion-dollar question. Kang doesn't show up unless... This is what I will say right now. Kang does not show up unless Kang is behind the TVA. I don't think we find out somebody else is behind the TVA, and then all of a sudden, you know, Loki's walking down the hallway, and then the men's bathroom door opens, and out comes Kang. Oh, sorry I occupied it there. Whew, light a match before you go in there, though, and then walks off. Like, I don't think Kang the Conqueror just shows up randomly. It's like, hi, everybody, I'm Kang the Conqueror. Like, if he's in this show, it's because he's behind the TVA. If he's in this show, it's because he's behind the TVA. It's not going to be some rando appearance. So if he is the one behind the TVA and it's not some Loki variant, then Kang will appear. If it's not Kang behind the TVA, then we're not going to see Kang. At least that's my guess right now. That's my guess right now. All right, next up. Cam K writes, Casey and Sloth have a point. One thing to consider is the general audience watching this show. If Kang shows up, I'll flip, but most people won't get it. Well, yeah, but you could say the same thing about Kang arriving in Ant-Man 3, right? Or whenever a new villain is introduced. You're not going to get it until you're introduced to them. And they could use either the last episode or the final 2 episodes to introduce us to Kang, which could theoretically then set up Ant-Man 3. Again, I'm not saying that's what's happening. I'm just saying that's kind of the logic behind it. Because again, there is a lot of very, very solid anecdotal evidence there that it could be that. Unlike Mephisto, which was just, ooh, somebody said little devils. Devils equals evil red demon, which equals Mephisto. And everybody went crazy about Mephisto. But this is a lot more tangible. So again, I'm not saying I know that it's Kang. I don't. It's very, very possible it could be a Loki because, again, this show focuses on Loki, which is part of the reason why, like when WandaVision was going on, we kept saying in our spoiler discussion videos, guys, this show is about Wanda and her grief and dealing with her pain. And everybody's like, Quicksilver's coming and all the X-Men are going to show up. And listen, there at the time, anything was possible. Those were possible. I talked about them myself. But that's why I think it's a really good thing that you point out that, listen, this show has not been about Kang. The show has been about Loki. And so maybe that points to that it's a Loki variant that's doing this. But I still think a very, very solid chance is that it is indeed Kang the Conqueror. But we will find out. All right, next up. Casey McNatt writes, if we get Kang at all, I see him showing up in something like a post-credit scene at the end of the season. I don't. Then what's the purpose of that? Like, okay, it was a Loki that was behind the TVA. All those other Lokis helped our Tom Hiddleston Loki get out of his limbo. Mobius is back. Great. Good show, everybody. Post-credit scene. Camera comes up behind somebody's head. I'm Kang the Conqueror! I'm Mary Poppins, y'all! And then the credits roll? I don't think so. I think, again, if we're going to get Kang, it's because he's part of the narrative and he's the TVA. If he's not the TVA, I don't think we get Kang. But I don't know that. I don't know that. That's just me speculating like everybody else, right? So we'll see. I'm Kang the Conqueror, y'all. All right, next up. We are at Cam K writes. On the flip side, though, they did bring in a big purple guy at the end of Avengers movie with fairly no explanation to him for the general person. I mean, that's true, right? But we all knew. That's the thing. Even the first Avengers movie, we knew somebody recruited Loki. We knew somebody gave Loki the staff. We knew they set all that up. And so, yes, when we did get to the end of Avengers and Thanos is there and appears, that we knew somebody was going to be there, right? We knew someone was going to be there. And that translates into what we're seeing in Loki. Somebody is behind the TVA. Somebody is behind the curtain. Somebody is pulling the strings there. And that very well could be Kang. What I don't think they're going to do, see, here's the thing. What I don't think they're going to do, as I've already just said, is that they're going to say that the person behind the TVA the whole time was Loki. And then in the post-credit scene, hi, everybody, my name's Kang. Because if they had, that would be like in the first Avengers movie saying somebody recruited Loki, gave Loki the army and gave Loki the staff. And then we find out at the end of the Avengers that the person who did all that was, I don't know, MODOK. Okay. I'm just pulling a name out of my ass. Okay. It was MODOK. I am the one who did that. Okay. And then they do a second post-credit scene where the camera just goes into outer space and you just see Thanos sitting on a couch scratching his balls going, I think I'm going to get the Infinity Stones. Like, what the hell was that? That came out of nowhere. Now, everywhere across the world, artists are drawing their own renditions of Thanos sitting on a couch scratching his balls. There you go. I mean, everybody's got to have a hobby. So anyway, we'll see. All right, next up. Where are we at? Tim Platt writes, so does pruning just put the variant back on their original timeline? Or maybe is that how variants for the TVA start working there? I have a feeling, I mean, that's something obviously I can't answer. This is something we're going to have the show answer. I have a feeling it's kind of a limbo. I have a feeling it's a limbo prison. I think it's outside of the timeline. I think it's their own kind of limbo prison. Again, I don't know that for sure, Tim. That's one of the $1 million questions going into next episode, but that's my guess right now. And again, we're basing that guess on a 20-second, scene in a mid-credit thing, right? That's all we're basing this on. So we'll find out, but I think it's kind of a limbo that each of them have their own, each variance has its own little place for. That's my guess. All right, next up. Elif Rasley writes, I didn't realize how much I cared for Agent Mobius. When Mobius was pruned, I screamed, no, damn you, TVA. I was upset too. And you're right. You don't realize, but here's where my moment was. Obviously, I knew that this character was great from episodes 1 and 2, right? This character, we talked a lot, how great this character, but you don't realize how vital that character is and how much you like that character until episode 3 comes along and he's not even in it. And that's why I was saying earlier, when episode 4 started and we see Agent Mobius right away, I turned to my buddy and said, this is what episode 3 was missing. I mean, not literally, but you could kind of feel it a bit. It kind of felt like this is what that episode was missing the whole time. And you're right. You don't even realize how much you like that character until they damn killed him. At least we thought they killed him at the time. But yeah, that's when it really hits you, Elif. You're right about that. All right, next up. Elif also writes, then when Loki was pruned, I thought, no, wait, what the fuck? The post-credit scene revealed to us that Loki was dropped somewhere else. Maybe Mobius is somewhere near where Loki is. I completely believe that. I totally believe that. I 100%. I don't say guarantee often, but let me ring the guarantee bell. I have no bell to ring. All right. I will wager my TVA jacket. All right. I will wager my TVA jacket that Mobius will be back. I have no doubt. No doubt. If Mobius doesn't come back, I will break up Ms. Minutes. And Ms. Minutes right now is like thinking, how the hell did I get dragged into this? I will take Ms. Minutes back there. Let me back up so we can get a better look at Ms. Minutes here. Okay, where's she in? I will take Ms. Minutes. I will sand her down into fine powder, pour it into a batter, and bake it into a cake, and eat Ms. Minutes if Mobius does not come back. That's how sure I am that Mobius will be back. Yeah, I think you're right, Elif. I think, look, if Loki is waking up in a place of Lokis after being pruned, then I'm going to guess that Mobius wakes up in a Mobius, with other Mobius variants, in some kind of Mobius limbo. That's my guess. Either way, he'll be back. He'll be back. All right, next up. Or Ms. Minutes is looking kind of tasty. Either way. Elif also writes, if there are multiple Lokis in one area, then maybe there are multiple Mobiuses too. Yeah, I was just saying that. I completely agree. I think there are going to be multiple Mobiuses. Again, when Ravona says in episode 1, yeah, the rings of the table are from you, but he doesn't seem to remember that. It's because it was other Mobius variants who left rings on her table. And he says, like, who got you that snow globe? She's like, I have other agents. I bet you it was another Mobius variant that got her that snow globe. So I completely agree with that, Elif. I completely agree with that. Okay, next up. Ismail Montoya writes, John, Sylvie and B-15 in the rain, show me. Well, again, one of the most powerful moments of the episode when she just says, show me. I'm like, wow, that was a powerful moment. I really like that a lot. Rylan Holman writes, one of two. Pruning seems to look similar to how the timeline is reset. From what we saw, pruning doesn't necessarily mean death. So when a timeline is reset, I think there is a strong chance it's not erased, but separated from interfering with the preferred sacred timeline, allowing there to be a multiverse. Maybe. Again, I do see differences between like the time charges going off and how those sticks work. Like with the mixing the chemicals, turning deep purple, and then woof, right? It's at least in my memory, and maybe I'm not remembering it right. It does seem to me like they fundamentally function differently. I could be wrong. And if it does turn out to be the case, Rylan, we'll remember that you said that. But again, interesting theory, but I'm going to guess no, but we may very well find out that you're right about that, Rylan. Thanks for sending in that theory. All right, Rylan Holman also writes, Ravona Renslayer is either an informed pawn or a key player, and I look forward to finding out which. Well, again, I think the other thing, too, is just blind acolyte. Like somebody who just totally buys into the lie and believes what she is doing is for the greater good. Or an informed pawn or a key player and somebody really, I believe those are all absolutely on the table. I believe they're all on the table. And I think we will get, you know what? I don't think we'll just get more information on that in episode 5. I think we will get a definitive answer to that in episode 5. I think we will completely know where Ravona stands and what she's actually about. Is she being fooled or is she a part of the plan? And I think we're going to get that definitive answer. Just like we got the definitive answer in episode 4 about Sylvie, is she a Loki variant truly or not? And we got that answer definitively in this episode. I think we're going to get the answer about Ravona in episode 5. I really do. All right, next up. Rylan Holman writes, probably won't happen the next few episodes, but if they have another season, I'd love for them to explore whether Gamora coming back and Steve staying in the past were part of the sacred timeline or if it was a Nexus event. The answer, you don't have to wait for, and by the way, Rylan sends in like a $20 super chat for that. Rylan, the answer to that is actually very, very simple. They were not Nexus events. You know, Ravona said pretty clearly in episode 1 when Loki brought up the fact that, hey, the Avengers are time traveling. Time traveling in and of itself is not a violation of the sacred timeline. If that's what was supposed to happen, then it's fine. Right? So Ravona laid it out pretty clear. The Avengers did exactly what they were supposed to do. What happened was supposed to happen. Because if it wasn't, the TVA agents would have shown up and taken them in as variants. Same with Gamora. What happened there was supposed to happen. Within the timeline is one thing. It has a beginning and it has an end. And within that timeline, you can have somebody jumping around time using the quantum realm or using other means to jump around the timeline. But if that's what's supposed to happen inside this timeline, then it's perfectly fine. Perfectly fine. So if Gamora was a Nexus event, the TVA agents would have just showed up immediately and taken her in. But that's not what happened, so it was supposed to happen. At least that's my interpretation of how everything's gone so far. All right, next up. Thanks for writing that theory, Rylan. Appreciate that, and I hope I shed some light on that. All right, Herc08 writes in, 1 of 2. You know you have a great show where you have 2 WTF moments. I'm wondering if the prune sticks work on anyone or just variants. That's an interesting question. I hadn't thought about that. Let's talk about that more in a second. 2 of 2. If it's just variants, wouldn't the other agent be shocked as well? Or are they just straight numb to it all? Okay, so I think you just raised a really interesting question, Herc, but you also just answered it. I think the sticks probably work on anything and anybody. Because if they only worked on variants, then the TVA agents would know that, hey, if we stick somebody, one of our own agents with this, it shouldn't affect them at all. And yet they were still trying to use them. Like the agents who were with Ravona, they would have known, hey, using the stick on Mobius is pointless. He's not a variant. So I'm going to say, number one, that's a great question, Herc. But I'm going to say, I think you just answered it. I think the sticks probably work on anybody. That's my guess. But maybe the next 2 episodes will include a little bit more expansion on that topic. We'll find out. All right, next up, where are we at here? We are at Lord Genome, who writes, when Mobius got the stick, I felt bad. But once Loki got it, I knew things would be okay. Of course, the show's title character isn't dead. But like I said earlier, Sylvie is the show's title character. Technically speaking, she's a Loki. So that's why when they killed our Tom Hiddleston Loki, it had me for a minute. I'm like, oh my God, they killed the Tom Hiddleston Loki. Now Loki is about Sylvie because Sylvie is a Loki, right? So I'm glad you were able to see through it, Lord Genome, but I'm going to admit right now, at first I didn't see through it. So that's why I was so relieved when the post-credit scene happened. I'm like, oh, okay, Tom Hiddleston's Loki's still here. We're still good. All right. Next up, Jacob Silvers writes, I can already imagine how the rest of the season's going to go. Loki and all the other versions of him are going to team up and take down the TVA. Listen, again, like I was saying earlier, I'm not one of these guys who I'm like, I have a theory and they better do it or I'm not going to be happy. But there's a little part in my heart here, Jacob, that is kind of keeping the old fingers crossed that we see a legion of Loki attacking the TVA. That would be pretty damn cool. I'm not betting on that. It could very well be something. It could be 100 other things, but there's a little part of my heart that is really crossing its little heart fingers that that's what we're going to see. We'll find out. All right, next up, we got Lord Genome, who writes, one nitpick. B-15's memory restoration violated the show don't tell rule. Reminds me of Isaiah Bradley's stories. Actually gives us flashback scenes. I'm not quite sure what you mean by that. Because it essentially did show and not tell us. Right? But it didn't show us everything. Show don't tell doesn't mean show us everything. But they showed us we could see just from the way she was acting. Like her encounter with Sylvie in episode 2 had some kind of profound effect on her. And they were showing us that rather than telling us that through her indecisiveness, the way she was responding to things. They showed, they didn't tell. And then they had where she had to confront Sylvie. That was showing us. She had to confront it because she was confused. She didn't know what was going on. We never had B-15 sit down and go, Dear Diary, I am really struggling with things because when that Sylvie character touched me, I saw memories in my head. And I didn't know what they were, and blah, blah. They were showing us that. And then they gave more context to us showing her confusion with some dialogue, right? So it was a combination of both. There are some concepts and things that have to be a combination of the two, where it has to be shown and told. But I think they did a nice job of balancing that out. And then they didn't feel the need. What I was really, really grateful for was that they didn't feel the need to, when she said to Sylvie, show me, to then have us jump into her memories as well. We had to waste 5 minutes of screen time going through B-15's memories. We didn't need to see that. We didn't need to see that. All we needed to know was that she figured out the truth, that she was herself a variant, that the TVA had plucked out of her life and existence. And we didn't need to show it again. We didn't need to see her walking down memory lane. You know what I mean? So I personally was very happy with that. So I thought it was a great combination of showing us when all we needed was to be shown, and then fill it in with little bits of exposition just to fill in the gaps. And I personally, Lord Genome, I got to say, I thought they did a pretty good job of it. That's my take on it anyway. Your take was a little bit different, and I respect that, but that's how I kind of saw it. Anyway, next up. Sloth is Legend writes, Hey, John, I thought episode 3 was a huge letdown. So did I. But episode 4 seemed to validate episode 3 somewhat. Should they have combined 2 into one long episode? No. Here's the thing. They didn't need to combine 2 into one long episode. What they needed to do was that if the point of episode 3, if they knew that we need the audience to understand and recognize a growing bond between Loki and Sylvie, that's fine. But you need to do that in the midst of a story. You have to have that happen naturally through a narrative. And they never did that. It was just, oh, okay, we're on a planet that's going to blow up. Let's take a train ride and be too late. Like, again, I go back to the references of The Mandalorian. When you look at individual episodes of Mandalorian, they treat those episodes like old Western serials, right? Every single episode was its own adventure. And each adventure had its own beginning, middle, and end, with its own goals, with its own accomplishments, with its own storylines and narratives going on, with new characters being introduced and fleshed out, all the while contributing, sometimes largely, sometimes smallly, to an overall narrative of the show. And doing it while building the bond and connection between the child and Mando himself and all that kind of stuff. Whereas episode 3, okay, we get it. We needed to see the bond growing between Sylvie and Loki, but you needed to do it in the midst of a story. You needed to do it with narrative, not just, look, everybody, the two of them sitting down having this heart-to-heart talk. Look at the bond growing. They should have done it with story, and that's where Mandalorian did it better. That's where Mandalorian did it better. Now, again, it was just one episode, okay? So far, they've had 4 episodes. I have loved 75% of this thing, and there was one episode to me that was subpar. And I get it. They wanted to show the bond developing, but they should have done it while accomplishing several other things at the same time and while telling a story, and they just never did. And that's disappointing to me. But that's just my personal take on it, right? You don't have to agree with me. That's totally fine. That's just kind of my take on it. All right, thanks for that, Sloth is Legend. Next up, Casey McNatt writes, I feel like we've seen Loki die so many times. Yep. I feel like we've seen Loki die so many times. I don't think we would still believe it when he is officially dead. It's like he said, we may lose, sometimes painfully, but we don't die. We survive. Yeah, I mean, look, but it's not just Loki, Casey. Now, you know my love for the MCU. I love the MCU, but the one standing criticism that I have had for years about the MCU is that it is the Marvel fake death universe. You can kill any character, and I don't believe they're dead. It takes away the stakes. It's like, oh no, Doctor Strange just had his head cut off. I'm not going to believe he's dead. He'll be back, whether it's in 5 minutes or in 5 months. Doctor Strange will be back. I don't believe for a second he's dead. I don't want to go, Mr. Stark. Oh, sad, boo-hoo. Spider-Man died. I didn't feel anything. I mean, it was a great scene and well acted, but I didn't feel anything because I knew Spider-Man was going to be back in the next movie. So it's no big deal. Oh, no. I mean, it's changed context now with the passing of Chadwick Boseman, obviously. But in Infinity War, when Black Panther died, oh, no, Black Panther died. I didn't mean anything because we all knew Black Panther was going to be back. And sure enough, he was. Right? I mean, it's the Marvel. And oh, no, Nick Fury died in Winter Soldier. Remember when he died? And oh, they were so sad in the hospital. Oh, Nick's dead. It's the MCU. He'll be back. And sure enough, he was back. He was back later on in the same movie. They didn't have to wait for another movie. He was right back there again in about an hour later. Loki has just kind of become the poster child of that, right? Because they have killed and brought back Loki so many times now that you're right. If they did kill Loki, like I bought into the idea when she gave Loki the old stabby and he poofed away, I thought he might be done for this show. I thought for this show, he might be done now, or at least for this season of this show, he may be done and the focus may go to the other Loki, Sylvie. But I never once believed for a second that that's it. We weren't going to see Tom Hiddleston's Loki again. whether it was later in this show or in something else later. And that is one of the problems that the MCU have painted themselves into a corner with. They have done the fake death thing so many times that we don't buy it anymore. We don't buy it. So, anyway, we'll see. Okay, next up. My Comic Planet writes, the TVA taking young Sylvie away implies she must have done something to cause the Nexus event. Any theories on what she may have done? The only thing I can think of is the gender change. Either she was born that way, or or Loki made a decision to shapeshift and be female from that point on, and that's not what that timeline's Loki was supposed to do. Now, we may find out. I'm expecting we're going to find out for sure what it is, but that's my operating guess right now, at any rate, my Comic Planet. All right, next up. Tim Platt writes, more sure than ever that there aren't timekeepers, but rather a singular entity controlling the whole thing. Whether that's Kang or not, I don't know. But see, even then, Tim, it is in a way a timekeeper doing it, right? Like, in a way, it's a timekeeper then. Whether it's a trinity of timekeepers or one person behind the curtain, there's still a Wizard of Oz. Maybe the Wizard of Oz isn't the way we pictured him. Maybe it's a little older man behind a curtain, but still there's a Wizard of Oz. So there's still a timekeeper, I think. It's just a different thing. Whether that's a Kang, whether that's a Loki, we'll have to wait and find out. All right, next up. We've got My Comic Planet writes, one of two. When Sylvie is taken to the TVA room, the guy with the mustache being manhandled by the guard was the same TVA agent who was monitoring the desk. Was it? Episode 4 was great. Let's go to 2-2. When Sylvie sent off those time bombs, this must have been to show that these TVA agents are indeed variants from different places in history. Well, okay, first of all, let's start with that one thing. When Sylvie is taken to the TVA room, the guy with the mustache being manhandled by the guard was the same TVA agent who was monitoring the desk. I got to go and look at that. I didn't pick that up. I got to go back and watch that again and look for that. I did that. So that's a really interesting thing there. I'm going to have to go and check that out. Anyway, then when Sylvie set off those time bombs, this must have been to show that these TVA agents are indeed variants from different places in history. Again, to me, I've mentioned this on the pregame show, and I still think this now. Her setting off the bombs had no other meaning than to be a big distraction. Sylvie needed something that was going to draw as many of the TVA Minutemen out of the TVA as possible, to leave the TVA as unprotected and as unguarded as possible, so that she could then take a stolen temp pad and go into the TVA and go and confront the timekeepers. It was just a massive distraction. I really don't think there was anything else beyond that. I think it was because remember, once all those time charges started going off, if you have the subtitles on for Loki, in episode 2, you see being spoken over the thing, protect the timeline, protect the timeline. And all the Minutemen are scrambling. They're all jumping through their portals, leaving the TVA to go to the various places where all these time bombs have been sent off to control the situation. And what did that do? That opened the door for Sylvie to come into there. So really, I think that whole thing was just one giant distraction. Now, we may find out that it was more than that. We may find out it was more than that, but we will know soon enough. All right, that's why I'm sticking on for now, My Comic Planet, but it's interesting. And thanks again for pointing out that thing about the guy who was being manhandled when Sylvie's brought in, because I didn't notice that, and now I'm going to go want to look at that. Thank you for putting that on my radar. All right, next up. Yo Pierre writes, one of two. Episode 4 was great. I completely agree, man. Not sure why they didn't let Loki and Sylvie just die on Lamentus. Again, the only thing I can think of is that they needed answers from them, because otherwise they should have just let them die and that would have ended the show. If they were going to kill them anyway. Anyway, love these spoiler talks. They're so therapeutic. I love doing these things, man, because number one, like I just did, I'm learning all sorts of things that I didn't notice, and I'm hearing some fantastic theories that I hadn't considered, and that's fantastic. And it's just fun to decompress with everybody here after the shows have been done. It's a lot of fun to decompress, and I'm having an absolute blast doing it. Okay, next up. Oh, sorry, was that just part 1? I think that was just part 1. Okay, part 2 of Yo Pierre writes, what was the carbonated drink you replaced Coke with? I'm addicted to Coke, but I need to control it. And I remember you mentioning it once, but I can't remember. Sorry if it's off topic. Everybody in the live chat, you want to answer that for Yo Pierre? Go ahead, everybody, in the live chat. In 3, 2, 1. I'm not seeing it. I'm on a 30-second delay from everybody else. There it is. Manpreet, Nobi, Evelyn, UFC 818, Anonymous, Delusional, Carlos, Rebecca. They're all saying it. It's Zevia Cola. Sponsor me, you sons of bitches. And yeah, okay, so the reason for those of you who haven't heard the story, the reason I switched to Zevia Cola, first of all, I'm now on 4 hours of talking today. 4 straight hours of talking today. So I constantly have to sip on a drink, right? Just to keep the old throat lubricated, right? I just got to constantly sip on a drink. And I used to drink like 2 liters of Coke a day. Then I realized, oh my God, look how many calories that is. So I switched to Diet Coke and Diet Pepsi. I switched to. But then I realized, oh my God, drinking that much Diet, you know how bad those artificial sweeteners are for you? Holy crap. Didn't realize how bad those artificial sweeteners are for you. And I was drinking a ton of it. So I went out looking for a soda that I could drink that had no calories and had no artificial sweeteners. That was the key. No artificial sweeteners. And somebody turned me on to Zevia Cola. And I got to tell you, man, I'm now quite fond of it. It's a little bit of an acquired taste, but I'm now completely fond of it. And I like it very much. So Zevia Cola, sponsor me, you sons of bitches. All right. Next up. We've got Tim Platt who writes, something cool I noticed was how in Sylvie's flashback, it looked like the Rainbow Bridge was still under construction or at least not active. That didn't hit me. I just looked at it and said, oh, they're at Asgard. They're on Asgard. Now the Rainbow Bridge had been along long before. Like we know from Thor Ragnarok, the Rainbow Bridge had been around long before Thor was even alive, right? So like all the way back into Hela's age, the Rainbow Bridge had been there. So I don't think it was under construction. Then again, it was a variant timeline. So maybe I'd have to go back and check on that again. It's an interesting thought, Tim. It's an interesting thought. I'll have to go back and check on that again. All right, guys, listen. We're going to take one more question. It's been an hour since our last break. We're going to take one more question, and then we're going to take another quick 5-minute break because you can probably hear it in my voice. My voice is starting to go. But Elif Bizrali writes, I'm looking forward to seeing Richard E. Grant in the next episode. Me too, Elif, completely. I love his costume. So glorious. You know what it reminded me of? It would remind me of seeing Wanda in her Halloween classic Wanda look costume. Seeing Richard E. Grant there in that classic Loki costume was awesome. I love his costume. I guess he doesn't have access to that fine Asgardian leather. Yeah, we'll have to see, but I love seeing it. I thought it was great. I cannot wait to see what he's going to do in the next episode. Okay. Guys, we're going to take a quick break here. And then when we come back, we will pick up with Nobi Montez. I'm going to let you guys know, though, that as you can probably hear, we've now been going over 2 hours. On top of the 2-hour stream I did a little bit earlier today. So you can hear it, my throat is struggling a little bit now. So we are going to take a break. And then when I come back, we're going to get through as many more of the questions as possible. However, I will let you know that there's no way we're getting through all of them today. There's just no way. So you guys can feel free to continue to send in questions and comments but you got to understand if you do, there's no way we're going to get to them today. They'll probably have to be addressed in a companion video that'll probably go up tomorrow. So just giving you guys a heads up on that, let you know. But I will get through as many as I can when we come back from break. So don't go anywhere, guys. Hang tight. Talk amongst yourselves. Grab a bite to eat, whatever. Don't go anywhere, and we will be right back. All right, everybody, and we are back. Thank you so much for your patience and indulgence. I took another little bit of a drink. Now, I'm going to let you guys know, I'm going to keep going as long as I can here. I'm not quite sure how much more the old throat gas tank has left in it. Again, I've now passed 4 hours of talking today, from the 2-hour John Campea Show earlier today, and now the 2+ hours that we've been doing this show. And yeah, I'm feeling the strain. You can probably hear the strain in my voice, but we soldier on, and we will keep going at least as long as I can. I could stop any minute now. I'll let you guys know when my throat tells me no bueno, then we'll stop, or no mas, then we'll have to stop. Okay, let's keep going here. Next up, Nobi Montez writes, after seeing episode 4, do you still think episode 3 was not character development for either of the Lokis? Absolutely it wasn't. Them showing a developing bond was not character development. That's not what character development is. Anyway, I bet Miss Minutes is behind controlling the timekeepers. Wouldn't that be funny if it was Ms. Minutes? Even then, this is a great example, Nobi. While showing them developing a bond, you could have had Loki revealing things that we didn't know about him. Right? That expands our understanding of the character. But instead, what did he talk about? He talked about Frigga. Everything we already know about Frigga, and things we already know how he felt about Frigga. So instead of doing different things or revealing different parts of himself, or whatever, that could have at least been giving us some character development while we saw them developing a bond. They could have been on a specific quest. And don't give me this, well, they were trying to get off the planet. Yeah, but it was just, let's get on a train and go there. That's not a quest. Again, I'll compare it to Mandalorian. With Mandalorian, there was always an adventure to be had. Okay, to do this, we got to do A. And then to do A, though, we got to do B first. But in order to do B, we got to do C first. And you'd see them going through this thing. And they had given us some kind of a quest, some kind of a mission, some kind of a story while doing it. That would have been preferable. Even just giving us some character development while they showed that bond growing, it would have been something. But no, two characters starting to attach themselves to each other isn't character development to me. But anyway, that's just me. All right, thanks for the question, Nobi. Next up, Elif writes, what if it is in Agatha's theme music, Ms. Minutes all along? I hope we get to see Ms. Minutes again in the next 2 episodes. I like Tara Strong. From what I understand, we are not going to see Ms. Minutes again. And now that gives me no joy telling you that, but from my understanding, we are not going to see any more Ms. Minutes. That Ms. Minutes is now done. Now, of course, other than you guys get to see Ms. Minutes right here, I think that's it. I don't think we're going to see any more of it, but it would be funny if they said it was Ms. Minutes all along. All right, next up, Tim Platt writes, Loki looked genuinely hurt when Mobius called him a bad friend. Yeah, he did. Again, this is the thing. We've gotten to see, this is a great juxtaposition. Let's see how they have shown a growing bond between Mobius and Loki and how they accomplished that in the show versus how they went about trying to show a development of a bond between Sylvie and Loki. Mobius and Loki's relationship has been built through action and storytelling. From solving of the mystery of where is the variant hiding, to going off to the Renaissance Fair and everything that takes place there, to them, all this stuff, their development of their bond was always being told through a story going on. Whereas the bond between Sylvie and Loki was not. And I think that's a really good juxtaposition that kind of illustrates that point. So you're right. So when Loki called him a bad friend, or when Mobius called him a bad friend, it legitimately had an impact because it was earned. It was built through story, through an adventure, through things happening. So anyway, I think that's a really good way to put it, Tim. All right, next up. Where are we at? We are at Frankie, who writes, I didn't know to what extent I actually loved Mobius until he was pruned. Somebody else was saying that exact same thing earlier, Frankie. Is it odd when Loki was pruned and when the post scene came, I felt a sigh of release for Mobius first? Dude, I completely relate because I'm right there with you. I don't know that I felt the relief for Mobius first, but it was simultaneous, right? It was like, okay, they're fine. Whew. Because again, when Mobius died, man, that was a freaking, oh my God, they killed Kenny, you bastards kind of moment. Like, you bastards. Like, I really felt it in my gut. Like, no, don't take this character away, please. I mean, I would have been okay with it because if it's a part of telling the story and if it was a part of Loki's journey that he loses Mobius, I would accept that. It would have been a very powerful moment. But I wanted him back. Like, no, don't take Mobius from us yet. I totally felt it too. All right. Thanks a lot for that, Frankie. Next up, we've got Casinema Reviews, who writes, one of two. People upset about the potential romance with Sylvie probably aren't aware of the much more insane things he's done in actual Norse mythology. Falling in love with an alternate version of himself is ultimately a completely different person, is extremely tame in comparison to that madness. Listen, when this is kind of what I brought up, Casinema, when people were saying like, wait a minute, what's this about Loki being gender fluid or bisexual? What? It's like, well, okay, you've clearly never looked at the Loki mythology because there's a whole bunch of batshit crazy things in Loki's actual mythology and in his comic book run too, by the way, in his appearance in the comics over the years. There's a lot of batshit crazy things about Loki in there. Now, of course, people shouldn't have been expected to know the Loki mythology or the background in the comics, for sure. But yeah, take Casinema's review thing. Just take his word for it. It's not the strangest thing we've ever seen coming from Loki. In either the mythology or in the comics themselves. It's truly been a wonderful world of weird things when it comes to Loki. All right, My Comic Planet writes, the scenes of Sylvie and Loki on Lamentus 1 were breathtaking. Great cinema quality SPF. Now listen, as much as I did not like episode 3, we said right from the get-go, it was gorgeous. That whole thing, both at the end of episode 3 and in the beginning of episode 4, when seeing that, whether it was a broken moon or a broken planet, whatever it was, now hurling down towards them. Oh my God, it was gorgeous. They really did. And like, listen, you don't have to like an episode to be able to identify good things in it. And that was one of the really, really strong things. For a television show, it was breathtakingly beautiful. I loved it, man. All right. Sorry, big gulp. Next up, Frankie writes, I will be thoroughly disappointed if we don't get to see Mobius variants played by Vince Vaughn and Luke Wilson. I better see Mobius on a jet ski at the end. Well, like I said, Frankie, I got no doubt that we're going to see Mobius on a jet ski. I feel pretty safe. I think all of us are pretty safe in bunkering down on that assumption. We are going to see Mobius on a jet ski. But I want all the Mobius variants just to look like Owen Wilson. But oh my God, if they actually brought in Luke Wilson, I mean, I get it, Vince Vaughn, the whole Wedding Crashers connection, but to bring in his brother, that would be kind of funny. Because his brother's kind of in the DC universe right now with the Stargirl show, right? So to bring him in on that, I think that would be really funny. I'd love to see that, Frankie. All right. Frankie also writes, why couldn't we see the B-15 memory sequence? Because it wasn't necessary. It would have been a waste of screen time. They were just starting to crack her character and flesh her out. That was a real opportunity for us. Again, Frankie, I got to say I disagree. When you're dealing with TV shows that are like 45 minutes long, you've got to decide what is important to have on screen and what is not. Did we need to see the memory sequence of B-15 to fully get? No, we didn't. The reality is we didn't need it. What we needed to understand was that B-15 came to the realization that she herself was a variant and lied to by the TVA. And she came to that actualization and realization. We know how it works because we already saw Sylvie do it with another character. So we didn't have to know the ins and outs of how that worked. We've already seen it done. And all we needed to know was that she herself was coming to that realization. And so she did. And I contend that there were other more important things that we needed for screen time to be used for, rather than going down something that we didn't. We knew what we needed to know. Wasn't necessary to see it. So I'm going to actually disagree with you on that one, Frankie. I think it was unnecessary. I wouldn't have complained if they had showed it to us. But really, at the end of the day, it was, you've got to budget. What do we need to spend our screen time on? And if there's something you don't need to see, then don't do it. Move on to the next thing and leave it off. And that's why I thought it was actually kind of good the way they did it. The way they did it. That's why I think it's good they did it the way they did it. All right, next up. Tim Platt writes, probably my favorite thing about the Loki / Mobius dynamic is how they can both read each other like a book. It's true. Like, they've built this bond between them. Like, first of all, Loki is extremely insightful. Mobius has studied the Loki. And so therefore you put them on there and they are just playing chess with each other. And it's great. And it's part of the thing that I absolutely love about the dynamic between the two of them. It's absolutely fantastic. Next up. My Comic Planet writes, one of two, it's crazy that when Sylvie and Loki are having their intimate moment on Lamentis 1, maybe even falling for each other, apparently that's so abnormal for Loki that it causes a massive Nexus event. The idea that their love for each other could destroy the whole damn thing, fascinating. Now again, I have issues with this. Because if them falling in love was like a big deal, it shouldn't have caused a Nexus event because Lamentis was about to blow up and be destroyed. Therefore, according to the rules that they have already laid out in there, it shouldn't have caused a Nexus event at all because it wasn't going to create any ripples in time or their reality because they were about to die and nothing else around them would have been affected. What I really love is, as a couple people wrote in a little bit earlier, is that what if what was causing the Nexus, as the doom was impending closer and closer and closer as the Nexus event rose and rose and rose, was the fact that they're not supposed to die on that planet at all. And them dying on that planet was going to cause a major problem in the timeline. So because of you guys and what you've been writing in, I have now bought into your theory that that's what the Nexus was. Not that their love surpassed that of the universe. Like, I don't think that was it. I think it was the fact that because of what you guys have said today, I think it's probably more because that they're not supposed to die on that planet. So yeah, that's kind of my take on it, but we'll see. All right. Thanks for that, Comic Planet. Casey McNatt writes, one of three. My Comic Planet mentioned something that came to my attention. If that was Casey, let me try this again. If that was Casey that was being brought in, he's pretty much been in every episode, except episode 3, and he's always been in the background. Plus, if that was Casey, he was a fugitive variant before he ever became an agent for the TVA, which is what we now know all the TVA agents are. So how does that work? Also, Sylvie seems to care about him getting hurt when she was brought in. Am I looking too much into this, or have I found our Loki in disguise? Okay. Take this with a grain of salt that I have just recently admitted that I didn't even realize that was the same person before. I don't think we found our Loki in disguise. I think if anything, sorry guys, I'm struggling right now. I think if anything, what it showed us when she was like, don't hurt him. I think that just showed us that as a young child, she had a good heart and she cared about people and was like, oh, you're hurting somebody. I think that was more the message. I don't think it was a Loki in disguise, but listen, they could be setting up one of these situations where it becomes a flashback later on. Like at the end of the show, we've realized that guy was the hidden Loki, and then they show us a quick montage of things that have happened in the series so far, where it's like, oh, it was there all along. I'm sorry, guys, I'm losing it. What was I? It was actually there all along under our noses, and we should have seen it. So maybe maybe Casey, you might be onto something. You might be onto something. We'll find out. Hey guys, listen, I'm going to keep going because I'm going to try to keep going for a few more minutes because you guys have sent in these questions and you've given us great things to talk about and you're supporting my show. So I'm going to do as many as I can before we have to end. But and believe me, I'm aware of that. I'm almost out of gas here. We're going on 4.5 hours and I've been talking today. I'm almost out of gas, but I'm going to get through a couple more if I can. All right. John Salvi writes, happy to see Sif. I loved seeing Sif. I hope we see more of her. I do too. Listen, there's been no reports whatsoever of Jamie Alexander or Lady Sif showing up in Thor 4, Thor Love and Thunder. But damn, I mean, it doesn't mean anything that she's in the Loki show, but I'm kind of crossing my fingers that maybe this is a little bit of an open door. That means we're going to see her in Thor Love and Thunder. Again, it's probably not because we've heard no reports of her being there, but I'm going to kind of hold on to hope that maybe that's the case. All right. Black Pretzel writes, what is love if not dagger disappearing? If not, what? What is love if not dagger disappearing? I'm sure that's a reference to something, Black Pretzel, that's just going right over my head. Sorry if I missed it, but don't worry. Everybody else in the live chat is smarter than me, so they probably know what you mean by that. All right. Next up. Windwalker 57 writes, pay no attention to that man behind the curtain. This is exactly what we've got coming. The whole timekeepers thing, like many of you guys speculated it, and you were probably bang on right. The whole timekeepers thing has turned out to be a Wizard of Oz. There's a man behind the curtain. The question now becomes, who is that man? Is it a Loki variant or is it Kang the Conqueror? I think it's most likely one of those two things, although we cannot discount that it could be something completely else entirely. We will find out. All right, guys, sorry. Last one today. I guess I can't do it anymore. I'm out of gas, guys. I'm tapping out. I got no gas left. I'm sorry, guys. I'm going to completely wreck myself, and I won't be able to do any shows tomorrow if I don't stop. But Ricky Bobby writes, Richard E. Grant wearing Loki's comic accurate suit. F yes, I cannot wait for the next episode. Again, I cannot be the only one, Ricky, that instantly got flashbacks to that WandaVision episode, the Halloween episode, when she comes down dressed in that classic WandaVision costume. I mean, just everybody loves seeing it. And of course, seeing Evan Peters dressed in that classic Quicksilver look with the lightning bolt and everything. Seeing Richard E. Grant there and that Loki thing with the giant horns as well. I mean, look, the other Loki variants were very cool too, including the dude holding the Mjolnir. But seeing Richard E. Grant in that costume, that was gold. Absolute gold. All right, guys, listen, there are still a lot of questions for us to get through. So I'm going to do a companion video. Maybe I'll see if I can get Robert to help me with the companion videos, but we will get every single one of the questions that you guys got sent in answered. We will get them all done by the end of tomorrow. We're going to put up a part 2 of this open spoiler discussion, and we will get every single question answered. I apologize. I got to cut this. Well, I'm not exactly cutting this short. We've been going 2.5 hours, but I apologize that I'm not able to get through all of them right now. I'm just apparently physically incapable of doing it, but we will get them all done. Guys, thank you so much for sending in all these questions, because you've given me things to look for that I didn't even notice my first time through watching the show. And now I got more. You gave us some great theories and stuff. And also you guys have supported this channel, and all of us, thank you very much for that support. Okay, guys, listen, don't forget, tomorrow morning, if I can speak, we have another episode of the John Campea Show. Aaron Cummings will be joining us for that, which I'm very, very excited about. And then, of course, also we've got some companion videos coming, a part 2 of this video. And then, of course, next week we'll have our pregame game day show next Tuesday for Loki episode 5. We only got 2 episodes left, which is crazy when you think about it. And then, of course, we'll have our next spoiler discussion next Wednesday as well. All right, guys, that will do it for me for this installment of our Loki open spoiler discussions. Thank you so much for being here. My name is John Campea, and until next time, my friends, bye-bye.